What are your Craigslist seller horror stories? I wanted a hamster. I found a post for free hamsters on Craigslist. I called the phone number and asked, "Do you still have any hamsters left?" And the lady replied, "Oh yeah, I just found some." Did I hear that right? I must have misheard that. I arrived at her house and there were several cages filled with hamsters. She wasn't an intentional animal hoarder. She started out with 2 or 3, but one of the hamsters escaped and it was pregnant. They started breeding in her walls like rodents, and every time she'd find one, she'd put it in a cage. When I arrived at her place, there were about 100 hamsters in the walls and under the couch. Her house was infested with hamsters. She was genuinely overwhelmed and had no idea how to take care of the problem. I gave her the phone number for a small animal rescue. They removed all the hamsters. I adopted 2 of them, Peanut and Teeny Bean. Teeny Bean had a massive facial tumor, 1 black eye and 1 white eye. He was born without one and his eyeball socket filled with some kind of gel. The vet said these were cosmetic and he was otherwise fine. He was the ugliest hamster ever and he loved to snuggle. In short, I went to adopt a hamster, and the reason she was giving them away was that her house had a massive hamster infestation. I went to buy a Nintendo 64 with a ton of games and a few controllers for $100. He told me to meet him at a Walmart not far from my school, so I went after the school day. He told me that morning that he had a cherry red Mustang and to meet him at it at 3 o'clock. I pulled into the Walmart and there were about 3 or 4 cop cars around a cherry red Mustang. The guy was sitting on the curb while they took a bunch of crap out of his car. He had like 2 pounds of Mary J on him and some other stuff. I was sad. I really wanted that Nintendo. You should have gone up to the cops and said, "Hey, I think that's the guy who stole my Nintendo. Did you find one in the car? Free Nintendo." I foolishly let a strange guy come into my house to buy a used iPad that I'd advertised on Craigslist for his son. He handed me $40 less in cash than I asked for on my ad, saying it was all the cash he had, and that he figured it was a fair price. When I refused to accept what he offered, he became irate, red in the face, slapped my table with his palm, and said I was being greedy and that everyone selling on Craigslist negotiates their asking price these days. I tried to calm him down by saying that I only had the ad in for 1 day and I'd be glad to call him if he couldn't sell it for my asking price. He angrily decided he still wanted it and left to go to his bank to get the $40, slamming my door behind him so hard that the house shook. As soon as he left, I texted him not to come back because I'd changed my mind about selling the iPad after all. He texted me back apologizing, but I never responded. I felt really relieved when I got him out of my house and also really stupid for allowing him to come in. I mean, most of these stories are about 10 years or older now, but the narrator can confirm that you can still get stories very much like this if you just go on Facebook Marketplace. I swear, half the deals I've had there have been absolutely cartoonish disasters. This video is not sponsored by Facebook Marketplace. My girlfriend and I arranged to buy a couch off a couple in a fairly bad neighborhood. After the hassle of trying to find the place, we get in the apartment, and the couch is in really good condition, and it was retail listed for $1,200, and we were paying $500. They were moving the next day and really needed to sell it. As I was carrying one of the sections of the couch out with the guy, I see a bug scuttle across the couch. The guy flicks it off with a certain quickness, and he looks at me with the most apprehensive stare ever. Long story short, the couch was absolutely infested with roaches. Like, I'm talking thousands inside the couch. And they knew. Since this seems to be a common question, no, I did not keep the couch. I had them cut open the bottom of it and roaches just poured out like a horror movie. I got my money back right there and then and left the couch outside where it belonged. They didn't put up much of a fight about giving me my money back. I love ferrets, and I was in the market for a pair. I owned one when I was younger. I always check Kijiji for people who bought a new pet and ended up over their head. Because I'm worried about these first and foremost. I know that shelter animals are still being fed. I saw the perfect post. Free to a good home. Got daughter ferrets, doesn't like them because they bite. I figured they'd still be trainable, and the pickup was in a nice part of town. I go to the house, and it is a nice big house. So far, so good. The lady invites me in and says the ferrets are downstairs. I get inside, and it's just wall-to-wall toys. Her 10-year-old daughter comes around the corner, and it's unbelievable how similar her daughter looks to Veruca Salt in the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie. It doesn't surprise me how much she acts like the kid in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory at all. She starts screaming and hitting her mum for trying to get rid of the ferrets. The mum doesn't even notice her daughter punching her. And then I notice all the animals in the house. There's like a billion hamster cages I see from the walk to the front door to the basement. They're all stuffed with bunnies and guinea pigs and hedgehogs and gerbils and hamsters and daggers and chinchillas. It's obvious that this spoilt brat got a pet every time she went to a pet store, and the moron parents just assumed they'd all go in hamster cages and eat pellets. I get to the basement and there's 4 budgies just flying loose, and there's a dog kennel too. The lady said the ferrets were in the dog kennel. There were 5 ferrets there. Apparently they'd bought her the whole litter before figuring out that they were so bitey. She was trying to give me 5 ferrets in a crap-covered dog kennel. None of them were vaccinated for rabies or distemperment. I declined and left the house through the reptile room, full of poor animals without heat lamps, and I immediately called animal services. I can't believe people like that exist. This happened to my friend. He was selling a graphing calculator and arranged to meet the buyer at a shopping center. The buyer wanted to test it out, but it didn't have batteries. My friend agreed to ride to a grocery store with him to pick up the batteries. On the way back to where they originally met, the buyer took the calculator to test it out. He plays with it for a minute, agrees it's in good condition, and passes it back to my friend. On the screen, the buyer had typed, "You are kidnapped." My friend finishes reading this, the buyer locks the doors and speeds up. My friend panics. Then the buyer stops, laughs, gives my friend his money, lets him out and tells him to be more careful. It was almost a Raymond K. Hessel kind of thing, I guess. I went to buy a semi-rare video game, Final Fantasy Tactics, before it became a greatest hit. I met this girl in a Wendy's parking lot, she gave me the CD case, I opened it, and it was empty. I demanded my $20 back, she looked at me and said if I did anything other than leave, she'd lie and say that I attacked her. I pulled out my phone and started to pretend to record her. My cell phone at the time had no camera. She started stumbling around pretending that I'd hit her. After a minute of this silliness, our eyes met and I think she realized how ridiculous this was getting and gave me my money back. These people sicken me. Using the law to extort $20 from you? Frickin' ridiculous. And then the real victims of what she was going to pretend happened get discredited. I went to buy a bunch of rock band gear and the lady tells me that her husband will meet me in a large parking lot. He'll be in a black and white SUV. So I show up and the only car is a highway patrol Suburban. I casually pull up a space away and get out, wondering when the seller is going to show up and wondering if I'd unknowingly done something illegal. Turns out even highway patrol gets bored of their rock band gear. It went as planned, but I did get nervous. 2 of my roommates went to purchase a couch from someone living on the 3rd floor of an apartment building. They paid for the couch, but somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd floor got it stuck so badly in the stairwell that they decided to cut their losses and just leave it there. That person makes a living selling that couch over and over. Nobody can get it down the stairwell. I was selling a small spray skirt for kayaking. Basically, it's a tight rain jacket that bungees around the kayak to keep the water out. I specifically advertised it as small. Anyway, meet up with a guy, he gets out of his truck, and he isn't huge, but he certainly should be looking for an L or XL instead of a men's small. He insists that he can fit into it. Spray skirts don't have zippers or anything, you just pull them over and they can get quite claustrophobic. This guy tries to pull his on, gets like halfway in, realizes he's stuck and he starts to panic. I have to help him take it off. I forgot to mention that this all happened in a busy mall parking lot as well. The guy tries to pull it on, gets like halfway in, realizes he's stuck and he starts to panic. I have to help him take it off. I forget to mention that this all happened in a busy mall parking lot as well. The guy wasn't really angry, but he said he was frustrated that I wasted his time. I mean, I was going to ask if you'd actually put the size on your page, but even if you hadn't, that's a good thing to ask when you're inquiring. And if he wasn't deterred by you just showing the size of it in person and expressing your doubt, it's unlikely he was going to put off by anything as trivial as listed sizes anyway. I was selling a 1996 Dodge Avenger. I hadn't driven it much the past year, and it had been sitting for about 4 months, so I got rid of it before it was a total loss. I put 2 new tires on, front brakes and alignment, a year earlier, so it had a few hundred miles on the tires. I took it for inspection, and the guy informed me that the radiator crossmember, the rear driver's shock mount, and the driver's rocker were just rusted out. It passed, but it would need work. I advertised it for $800. One guy stopped by. He lived nearby. He gave me a story about not having much money and needed a car to get to work. He and his friend took it for a 2-hour test drive. They left the friend's very expensive truck, so I wasn't worried that they weren't coming back. I'd already explained everything I knew to be wrong with the car, and the buyer started pointing out known problems and offered me $250. I haggled him up to $380 as a price. We were to meet in a few days for the transfer. I met him at a trailer sales office nearby, even though I offered to go to AAA because it would be cheaper. He said, I took the car to a mechanic and he said, the problems that I'd already outlined to him, how about I give you $300 instead? I said no, he was already getting it for less than half my asking price, and it was worth that much in scrap anyway. We did the transfer. He had us say it was a gift in exchange for some work so he wouldn't have to pay sales tax, and that it had cost him $200, even though AAA would have charged $75. 3 weeks later, the guy calls me. He claimed that the head gasket was bad and the car had broken down. He wanted to know what I was going to do about that. I said, look, you bought a car off the side of the road for almost nothing. I can't offer anything. If I'd known it had a bad gasket, I would have scrapped it. And then it later occurred to me that if the head gasket had been bad, the mechanic should have found it when he looked over it originally. The buyer hung up, then for the next 3 days he called me 5 times a day. I didn't answer and he didn't leave messages. A week later, I saw the car in a local shopping center lot. It had a dent, so I knew it was mine. The guy was just trying to scam me. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. It was a few weeks before my junior year of college, so this was 2010. I wanted to sell an old couch from my previous house because we were getting 2 new roommates and they already had couches. I posted the ad and 15 minutes later I got an email. The guy said he'd pay $75 for the couch. I'd listed it at $100, but he'd bring some Xbox games to trade to make up the difference. Okay, nice. So he pulls up in a truck with 2 women in the bed. I insist on helping him get the couch outside, but he says no and he has the 2 women do it. And then things get really interesting. He says he only has $50, but if I took the money, he would give me one of the girls for 20 minutes. Keep in mind, he told me this as the couch was sitting in his truck. I didn't know what to say. I took the $50 and said to just leave. He was insulted for some reason and threatened to come back and beat my punk face and rob me blind. We moved to our new house the next day with our new roommates. Fast forward a month, I was reading my school's newspaper, and on the front page was a picture of my old street with the headline, Man arrested intimidating students at a party with a crowbar. My old residence. And I read on. His name was Bruce, and his criminal background included 17 misdemeanors and a dropped unspeakable act and attempted kidnapping charge. Also, just as icing on the cake, he was also wanted in Ohio for numerous stalking charges. Oh, Craigslist. Never again. I bought an Xbox 360 from a Craigslist ad. The kid selling was like 17. We met at a public location, a Starbucks, at my request. I handed him the money, and he handed me the 360. Then he asked me if he could buy me a coffee. I declined. He asked me if I wanted to go out sometime, and I declined and thanked him for the Xbox and left. Well, unfortunately, he had my phone number and email address as I'd responded to his ad. He started sending me these long, angst-filled teenage emails about how he was in love with me and I was his destiny, and texting me dozens of times a day. I used to grow vegetables indoors in my apartment in college, hydroponically. I did not, although no one believes me, grow Mary J. Anyways, I graduated and got a house with plenty of land so I could finally grow outdoors, and I sell my old HPS lamps on Craigslist. The guy who picks it up is your typical 18-year-old wannabe gangster green herb head. And about 4 months later, I see him on the news having been arrested for operating a grow house, less than a quarter mile from a police station and a school. Not Craigslist, but Kijiji, which is the same idea but a different site. A couple of years ago, I was buying some DVDs from a guy. I'd drunk too much the night before and I was having a hellish hangover, but I decided to get the DVDs anyway. He was on the sketchy side of town. Anyway, I pulled up to his house. It's a 5-plex, 5 attached houses, and there's a note on the front door to go to the back. So I go to the back and there are these 3 gangster-looking guys, midday drunk, and some smacked-out girl with her shirt tied up, barely covering her, and in short shorts. They all stop what they're doing and stare at me. Are you selling the DVDs? I ask, sweating beneath my dorky Spider-Man t-shirt. DVDs? Nah, man, don't have any of those. You want some smack? Says the largest one, flexing his muscles. No thanks. What about my girl here? What do you mean? My face is dripping with sweat at this point. You want to take her home? No thanks. I saw this ad on Kijiji. Why not? You think she's ugly? He stands up and looks at me menacingly while I stammer and then says, nah, I'm just messing with you, man. No DVDs. You sure you don't want some smack? No. Okay, I've got to go. See ya. And I turned around and got the heck out of there. Okay, that's the second post with someone just offering somebody else's bedroom favors up. That makes me think there's definitely some sort of common scam to extort or rob these people in the act. Don't accept these sort of offers, kids. Oh yeah, I needed Microsoft Office and I noticed that people sold the program for cheap on Craigslist. One guy 20 minutes away was selling the program for $20. Told me to meet at his house late at night when he got home from work. It ended up being in a sketch dead-end street, and he told me to come to his garage, where he and a couple of his buddies were smoking inside. This was my first, "this is kinda weird" moment. After I took my laptop out and started putting it on the table, one of his buddies tried to close the garage door on me. I realized what was happening, so I tried to grab the laptop and hit the sensors to leave. The guy tried to grab the laptop same time, and I ended up being in quite a tug-of-war with him. I let go and hit the sensors and decided to just leave and call the cops. They hid the laptop, but I was able to use the Find My iPhone app, which finds laptops too, and got it back. I don't know how the guy thought he'd get away with it. I was looking to buy a motorcycle a while back. I found the one I wanted on a post on Craigslist late one night after work at about 9 p.m. I emailed the seller and he was still online, and he said I could still go and see it if I came soon. So I went and saw the guy to take a test ride. As any responsible seller would do, he asked for cash in hand before he gave me the keys. And he asked to see my license to make sure I had an M endorsement, otherwise I wasn't getting the thing. So everything was good. I told him I'd be back the next day and we could hammer out all the details, the title, the bill of sale and stuff. Well, the next day the guy says he can't meet, he's getting called into work. I'm sad, but no big deal. If he's still interested in selling, I can wait a day. The next morning at about 9 a.m., he calls and says, oh hey man, I'm going to be in the area today, would you just want me to bring the bike by? And I'm stoked. That means I don't have to call my insurance before I can ride it home legally. We continued talking and I said, hey, don't you need my address? After thinking about it for a moment, he said, nah, I remember it from when you showed me your license. Well, that's a little odd. So he shows up at my house with the bike at about 10 a.m., 2 days after I'd gone to look at it. The guy is being real nice and we're chatting about motorcycles, and then he says he forgot the title at his house. He'll go back for it. His wife followed him in his truck. He'll get it and then we'll do a bill of sale. I figured that would be fine. I offered to go ahead and give him the money. Bad idea, I know, I was 19. And he says, well man, why don't you give me half of it? That's $2,000, and I'll get the rest when I get back with the title. It seems pretty fair, so I let him go. So I go wait patiently inside as the guy goes to retrieve the title. He isn't back within the hour as he said he'd be. He probably got sidetracked. I wait another hour, and I'm getting nervous. So I call him. No answer. I wait another hour, and I'm getting really creeped out. The guy just left his motorcycle here. Why? And then things get really weird. 2 police officers show up at the house I'm renting. They bang on my door. I answer, dumbfounded. Is that your motorcycle in the driveway, sir? They ask, and I start to explain the situation. After telling them that the guy will be back soon with the title, they say, well, sir, this bike was reported stolen 2 days ago. The person who reported it stolen said he drove by here and saw it and he called us right away. Did you steal this motorcycle? And I'm freaking out. No, I didn't steal it. I tell them again what the situation is. I give them the guy's phone number. He doesn't answer them either. They call another officer to my house. As they're waiting on backup and getting my information, they say, we have recorded video from the owner of someone getting on this bike and riding away late Sunday evening. Do you know anything about that? I say I don't and then say, well, I went and I test rode this Sunday night, but the owner was there. I can give you his address. And they seem interested. I give them the address. They talk amongst themselves for a moment as I'm sitting on my front stairs. They come back to me and say, sir, the address you gave us belongs to the original owner of the motorcycle who reported it stolen. And it begins to make sense. I'm being framed for a theft. I ask if I can see the video of the bike being stolen, and they say that I can if I come down to the station with them. So I go. No handcuffs, but I am in the back of a police cruiser. I ask the cop who's driving if he can get the guy who reported it stolen to come down too. They say that the guy just isn't answering his phone. I ask if it was the phone number I gave them, and they say no. The guy must have had a burner phone or something. So I get to the precinct, I get taken to this cop's desk. He asks me a few questions and then asks me to watch the video. It's on a CD. He pulls it up, and sure enough, it's me getting on the guy's bike. But the guy isn't in the frame. It was then that it really became clear to me how detailed this whole facade was. The guy had the bike around the back of the house, but we spoke around the front, and I parked my car around front. The bike had the keys in it already. When I bought the bike back, I left it around the front of the house per the guy's request. Because of this, the video showed me getting on the bike at 10 p.m. with the keys in the ignition, pulling it out and seemingly never bringing it back. He even managed to stay out of frame, and aside from a couple of glances in his direction, I don't seem to be interacting with anyone off camera. I'm really screwed here. So my answer is already really long, but I'll sum it up. After spending the entire day at the local police station, the guy shows up and starts asking if I'm the guy who stole his bike. The situation got worse for me until the police managed to make the guy slip up. He just couldn't keep his story straight. He breaks down and admits that he made it all up. He needed the money to pay some bills, but he couldn't bear to sell his bike. So he set up a plan to make an insurance claim for someone stealing his motorcycle, and then created a plan to keep the bike, get some money from a buyer who'd be framed as a thief, and all would end well for him. Except it didn't. I think he ended up going to prison. I'm not sure. I got my money back and I put the whole ordeal behind me. So there, that's my creepy Craigslist story.
People, what is your strangest glitch in the Matrix moment that cannot be explained? When my son was about 4 years old, one night he started hounding me to ring Nana. He had never asked to call her before, so I just put him off for an hour or so and he came back and insisted that I call her. Turns out she was sitting on her lounger experiencing a massive tachycardia event and couldn't breathe. I called an ambulance and met her at the hospital. The same week, she had a pacemaker and defibrillator unit implanted to fix the problems. To this day, I cannot explain what drove him to get me to call, but I'm very glad he did. He doesn't even remember it. I don't know why, for the life of me, but it just took me 20 times to clearly say he doesn't even remember it. This happened to people I know, not me directly. A woman who works with my mom was out doing her grocery shopping one night and ran into me at the supermarket. She told my mom about the encounter the next day and asked why I didn't recognize her, as we saw each other once every few weeks when I'd go and help with any heavy lifting at their store. My mom confirmed that it couldn't have been me as I was at home. The woman also mentioned feeling oddly nauseous during the interaction. I was about 16 or 17 at the time. Another woman I know said she didn't know I walked through the park near her home after work. Dumbfounded by her observation, I listened as she explained that she'd seen me every so often after work, walking briskly through a large park, which I do know of but have only driven past, as if I was exercising. She said I walked close by her the previous evening and she was going to speed up to catch up with me and say hello, but as she started to, she began to feel ill, so she slowed down and then sat on a bench for a few minutes. By then, she'd lost sight of me. This happened about 3 years ago and both occurrences were miles apart. I can't believe I forgot about this, but it happened when I was 20. I was living on campus on the ground floor of a 3-story building. There were only 36 people in the building, so I knew everyone by sight at least when this happened. A new guy moved into the 3rd floor. We'd exchanged pleasantries and I knew his name and what floor he lived on, but not much else. I was coming out of the front door one morning and he was coming down the stairs and said, "Oh, I just saw your sister going up the stairs." I asked him what he meant and he said, "Your sister? She's here all the time? She wears her hair the same as you?" I used to change my hair a lot. At the time, it was midway down my back and fire truck red. There was nobody on campus with hair like mine. I noped out and went back inside. You know, it might be hard to accept for some people, because I know we live in a time where everyone likes to think they're a special little snowflake, but some of us just have that face, that body, and even that sense of fashion. You just look like a lot of people. I stopped at a gas station on my way to work one morning. I take out my debit card and take my car keys with me and leave everything in the car. Pay for my stuff and throw my debit card in the metal cup I have in my car. Literally half a second later, I look down and my card is gone. Pulled apart everything trying to look for it and couldn't find it. I go to work and go home to find it sitting on my desk. Double check my bank account to make sure it was the card I used, and it was. To this day, I still have no idea what happened. I mean, I can't explain that either really, unless, you're a liar. Saw a dude with no face driving a car. No features at all. It was just blank. I did more than just glance at him. I was staring. Just smooth skin and a men's haircut. I've never told anyone because it's so ridiculous sounding and I don't think people would believe me. Probably a rational explanation for it, I suppose, but man, what the hell? Maybe some kind of prankster or whatever trying to freak people out or something, or maybe you were doing something you shouldn't have been doing while driving. I've posted this before, but my family go to a garden center near my town every winter. Pretty Christmas lights. Well, this one year, the day before we were supposed to go, I had a dream that on our way, the tire of the car came off and we crashed hard. It was such a horrible, graphic dream. My mom's leg had been crushed, my dad stuck, etc. Well, I told my mom in the morning and she joked that she'd checked the wheels. She actually must have. She said the car had felt weird and the dream unnerved her. Lo and behold, the tire is loose and needs to be taken to a mechanic. mechanic. Really weird experience, especially as I've never had a dream feel so real before. Well, you know what they say, with great power comes great responsibility. Now come over to my house and dream up some winning lottery numbers if you would be so kind. Once I walked into my living room from the hallway, saw my mum in the kitchen pouring a bowl of something fully clothed, important to the story, and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" She ignored me, put something in the fridge, and walked into her room. I figured she didn't hear me and walked into my room. Not even 2 minutes later, she walks into my room, soaking wet, in a towel, and tells me she had fallen asleep in the bathtub and had just woken up. Weirdest crap ever. That sounds pretty believable, actually. Year 3 or 4 at school in the UK, so I'd have been like 7 or something. Anyway, at the end of school we all had to line up in our year groups in the yard and we would be led by our teacher to the front of the school and either onto the bus or picked up. The pathway from the back to the front of the school was narrow, so all single file. I was walking along, chatting and laughing with my peers in front and behind of me. Next thing I know, I'm stood on the path, completely alone. The teacher comes running back from around the front of the school and says, "Craig, hurry up, you'll miss the bus." I'd literally missed/skipped a few minutes of time. I've always remembered it. The answer is simple, my friend. We are nothing more than sleeping slaves. Diavolo is doing whatever he be doing in Italy and using King Crimson all over the goddamn place. But in all seriousness, this has happened to me as well. I've blanked out going from point A to B and had no recollection of my journey to point B. It's something that happens. People just go on automatic sometimes. But it certainly doesn't change how jarring it can be. Not the strangest, but the most recent. Early last month, I went online to pay a bill, like I've done for years. I get to the last page before finishing and the web page freaks out, with a multitude of display issues before finally receiving an error message. After several attempts to pay, I give up, assuming the site is having issues. I go back 2 days later and pay my bill, and it goes through normally, with me getting my usual text and email notifying me I paid. I'm very confused a few weeks later when I check my email and find a notice from the company whose bill I paid with a semi-threatening email saying the bill is due that day and do I need to set up a payment plan. I've been dealing with the company for almost a decade and have never been late in paying. I check my credit card account and there's no record of me paying, nor are the text or email I received still in my records. I pay the bill and chalk it up to a senior moment on my part. Last week I got my one credit card bill. It says I never paid my last bill, so now I've got that bill to pay plus the interest. I find my previous bill open but with the invoice in place in my living room. Here's why I'm posting. I'm physically disabled and can't drive, and I always pay that credit card bill in person after they messed up my payment years ago. A family member always takes me to my credit union to pay that bill, and like me, he remembers us going down to pay the bill. They say I never paid. He and I even remember a conversation we had on the way to the credit union and going grocery shopping afterwards, but yet the bill is unpaid and the bill is in my possession still. I don't know what to say except that credit card unions can be tricksy little rats. We'll call them rats. In my area, there are apiaries. An old girlfriend and I were driving down a backcountry road exploring the area, and we both saw an old lady in dark clothes tending to a few beehives in an open field not far from the road, maybe 50 yards or so from the road. She was covered in bees. I slowed down, the bees covered the woman, and then the bees all flew away and the lady was gone. There was nowhere she could have vanished to or hid, and we both saw it happen. Answer: that was no little old lady tending that beehive, that was the pain from Metal Gear Solid 3. When I was 23, I went to a week's workshop with uni abroad to Barcelona. The workshop was based in an obscure part of the city, and I always thought I'd never be able to find that area again. Fast forward about 15 years, I score a job in Barcelona, get off the plane, go to the hotel near my new office, and it's across from said workshop. I worked there for 3 years, and when that job ends, I move country again for about 5 years. About a month ago, I was invited to an interview for a job, which I'm now in the process for, and guess where the offices are? Yep, around the corner from the workshop that I thought I'd never find again. It's got me wondering if it's coincidence or should I just move to that area until I work out why the universe keeps sending me there. This is probably my favorite one so far. The universe just sending you back to a specific place, like in another country regularly, is just kind of cool. Woke up one morning, went into the living room, and there was a pile of at least 100 maggots in the middle of the living room. Fat fuckers, too. No idea where they came from, or perhaps more disturbingly, what they had eaten to get that size. Well, that would certainly freak me the hell out if it was the first thing I woke up to in the morning. Wife and I were driving out of Texas to come back home to Ohio. We stop at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. Kind of a run-down little place. Wife goes in while I'm filling up. I finish and pay at the pump and decide to head in and use the restroom real quick. I walk out and the wife is at the checkout paying. Wall up and the guy just starts looking at me and then calls me out by my full name. Lieutenant? Yeah? Your name is Lieutenant Drinks a Lot, right? Yeah. Do we know each other? Nope. Then how do you know my name? I don't know. Wife and I look at each other and we both get the hell out of there. I don't have a common name. I had never been to that gas station, let alone that town in Texas, ever. Every time my wife and I think about it, we can't explain it. Now, I've never worked a register, but I think that maybe when he paid to fill it up, it may have come up with his name if he paid by card at the pump, so the dude just took a shot in the dark and was like, oh, this is that dude. I don't know how he'd know that he's a lieutenant unless I know that you can get different titles on your debit and credit cards and whatnot, so I don't know if lieutenant is an option that you can have or something. It's the most rational explanation I can come up with, that's for sure.
After a bath, I went to put clothes on, blacked out and woke up on the floor, sitting upright against the sink and dressed. I have no idea what happened. I didn't feel sore anywhere like if I had fallen over, and it was as if I sat on the floor and dressed myself while I was unconscious. Felt like 20 minutes had passed, even though the bathroom still had steam in it. Kinda just shrugged it off, but I'll still think about it.
You probably just got up too fast, you silly cow. I'm not the kind of person to have a great many friends, but those friends I do keep are sacred to me. So one evening, I'm getting out of a Rotterdam subway to go to my apartment near there when I see an old friend, one I haven't seen in the flesh in a few years, heading into the subway. I call out his name. He turns, waves, and makes this call me gesture. Then the doors close and subway rides off. 30 seconds later, my phone rings. It was my friend who told me he'd just seen me getting the normal train he'd used to get home from the bar. Apparently, I had grinned, waved, gestured, call me, the doors shut, and the train drove off. I lived in Rotterdam, he lived in Enschede. Well, looks like more doppelganger shenanigans are afoot. In high school, I remember going to English and the teacher did roll call. She called my name and I raised my hand and said, I'm here. Then she stopped, saying, so he's not here then. My friend and I laughed because I was obviously here. Figured she was messing with me. That night, my mom got a call telling her I wasn't at class today. I was actually marked as absent. I go back to school the next day and tell my friend, Mrs. English teacher actually freaking counted me as absent. And he said, why wouldn't she? Thought to myself, you're not funny. But I just let it slide because I thought again I was being messed with. Then one of my friends sits down and asks, you feeling better today? Or were you just playing hooky? I was so confused. Then I go to my first hour and that teacher hands me the work I supposedly missed from that day. I looked in my bag and had the same stuff, guide and assignments already there. To this day, I don't know if I missed that day of school or not. I like to think that the teacher and the students, your friends, were conspiring against you to mess with you really badly. About a couple years ago, a friend sent me a video and he asked if I had a lost twin somewhere. It was a video made by amateur actors from the city I used to live in. There was this girl that looks just like me. She talked just like me and her part on the sketch consisted of telling a joke I used to tell at the time. I was freaked out of my mind. For some stupid reason I deleted that video and I haven't been able to find it anywhere. And God knows I spent an embarrassing number of hours trying to confirm it even existed in the first place. I kept this one in just as an example of a stupid one that I absolutely don't believe. And believe me, there are already a few that I'm very skeptical of, but some of them are pretty cool. Senior year of high school, 30-minute lunch. My buddy and I drove all the way from my school to McDonald's, normally about a 10-minute drive, so 20 minutes minimum there and back. But we stopped by my house in between the school and McDonald's. I grab a shirt, change, leave, drive down the street, get into an altercation with a guy who we flipped off for tailgating. A shooty bang bang is pulled. We think he was across the street. Looked like a shooty bang bang, but who knows? His wife in the passenger seat starts yelling at him. We part ways. Go to McDonald's and order food, eat in the parking lot, decide we are late regardless. We had no access to the time in my car and our phones were in our lockers at school. We also were frequent ditchies or tardy kids. Turns out this all occurred in 18 minutes on the dot. It's freaking impossible, but it happened. My buddy and I still talk about it to this day, saying we went through a wormhole or some crap. Or my Nissan, rest in peace, somehow could time travel or slow down time. Time-traveling Nissan is not nearly as cool as a time-traveling DeLorean. I was at a gas station getting a coffee. I absolutely love gas station coffee, and this was somewhere I always stop before heading to work. I went to pay for my coffee and I tapped my card. The lady at the till tells me it was declined. I try inserting it with my PIN because maybe my tap wasn't working. The lady said it was declined again. There was no one else in the gas station at that time, so I'm like, hold up, let me check my online banking. Because I'd just gotten paid and I knew I had money. I go to my online banking and it says that I paid. I show her the transaction and she starts insisting that it didn't go through on her end. Like, okay lady, I'm not paying for the same coffee twice. Next day, I go in to grab another coffee and the lady tells me that I stole the coffee the other night, but doesn't make me pay for it. I am angry because I just got a lecture when I know the money for the coffee came out of my account. I checked my online banking later and there was no transaction for the coffee. Not so much a glitch in reality as it is a glitch in your bank account. Biking back from school one day with a friend and we were talking when suddenly I got a really strange case of deja vu. I remembered the exact moment as if it had happened once before and knew what he was going to say next. Then he said it. Nothing mind-blowing, but more than 14 years later, I still can't explain it. See, I would explain that by saying that the friend was probably talking about something that you were only passively listening to before, but now that you were actually focused and subconsciously aware of what they were talking about before, you kind of knew what they were going to say next. This happened to me several years ago while I was living in California and working a great job in a downtown coffee house. I loved everything about that job. I worked with fantastic people and our shop was located in the city's historic district in a very old, very beautiful building that had once been a hotel in the 1800s, but had since been converted into apartments, lofts, and of course, the big coffee house on the main floor. Being an early birdie and living only a couple blocks away from the coffee house, I was always scheduled to work the opening shift, which started at 4:15 a.m. It was the most unpopular shift, but it happened to be my absolute favorite one because I loved walking to work in the quiet of the early mornings as the rest of the city was sound asleep. Normally, downtown was quite loud and busy, full of people and constant activity, but in the early hours of the morning, it was still and silent, and I felt as if I was the only person in existence walking through a ghost town. Every day, I arrived 10 or 15 minutes early for my shift and would wait for my manager on the patio outside of the shop. It was always just the two of us working that early shift, and my manager was often running a little bit behind and never arrived before I did. But I didn't mind at all. I liked to spend some time by myself on the patio outside of the darkened shop, gathering my thoughts while I waited for him to walk up with his keys to unlock the door. One morning as I was walking to work and approaching our building, I noticed that the coffee house was brightly lit up as all the lights were already turned on and shining through the store's giant glass windows. I was about 10 minutes early that morning, so I was very surprised to see that my manager had arrived before me and had already started opening up the shop. I walked up to the glass door and pulled on the handle to let myself in, only to find that it was locked shut. That wasn't really unusual, as we often kept the doors of the employee entrance and main entrance locked while we got everything ready for the day and went through our morning procedures until 5 a.m., which was our official opening time. What was unusual, though, was the sound of music I could clearly hear drifting through the speakers inside the store. This was during the holiday season, so we were playing Christmas music throughout the day, but on this particular morning, I could hear the Christmas music already playing its familiar loop at a rather high volume inside the store. This was during the holiday season, so we were playing Christmas music throughout the day, but we never turned it on until around 9 or so in the morning, out of respect for all of the tenants living in the apartment above us. But on this particular morning, I could hear the Christmas music already playing its familiar loop at a rather high volume inside the store. I thought it was odd, but decided that maybe my manager was just feeling extra festive that day and wanted to listen to some tunes while we worked. I knocked on the employee's entrance door and waited for my manager to come and let me in. I looked through the glass and watched for him. He didn't come, so I knocked again and waited some more. He still didn't appear, so I knocked again and again. I then walked to the main entrance door and tried knocking on those with no luck. I checked my watch and saw that I had 5 minutes until I needed to clock in. I knocked again, much louder this time, and looked inside through the glass door for any signs of my manager. And that's when I heard the muffled sound of voices coming from the back of the store, where the kitchen of our coffee shop was located. At that quiet, early hour in the morning, every sound seems to be amplified, and what I could distinctly hear was two male voices talking and laughing together. That was very unusual unusual, as I had mentioned before that it was normally just me and my manager who opened up the shop. But I figured someone had probably just needed to pick up an extra shift. I knocked yet again and continued to listen to the sounds coming from the coffee shop. The men kept talking and laughing loudly. They seemed to be having a really great time. In addition to the music and the talking and the laughter, I began to hear the sound of clanging dishes and also the sprayer of the 3-compartment steel kitchen sink being turned on and off, which was very, very unusual, as there would be no dishes to wash before the store had even opened. I was also confused as to why the manager and whoever was with him were in the kitchen in the back of the store, because so much of our opening procedures, setting up the pastry cases, brewing the coffee, preparing everything for the espresso machine, were done at the front of the store, where I was waiting to be let inside. At this point, I was getting a bit irritated, as I was supposed to start work in just a few minutes, and I needed to punch in on our time clock. I hated clocking in late for work. I dug out my phone and dialed my manager's cell number. He didn't pick up, so I dialed the number to our coffee shop instead, and the 2 phones inside the shop, one in the back office and one up the front by the register, started ringing. Once, twice, 3 rings and no answer. Now 4 rings and 5. I hung up and I immediately dialed again, annoyed that they were making such a racket in there with the music and all the talking and the laughter that they probably couldn't even hear the phone at all. Just as before, nobody answered. I hung up and redialed the store for a 3rd time. The phone rang and went unanswered, and so I banged on the door yet again to no avail. I looked at my watch, and I was officially late for work. As I was standing in the front of the locked door with my phone against my ear, becoming more and more irritated, I noticed a pair of headlights reflecting in the glass rolling up behind me. I turned around and saw something I did not expect at all. It was my manager. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said as he climbed out of the driver's seat and shut his car door and hustled up to the shop's entrance. "I tried to get here as fast as I could," he said as he moved towards me and fumbled with his keys trying to find the one to the shop door. "You're mad," he said. "I can tell. I'm really sorry." Completely confused, I put my phone away and turned to head into the store with him, and that's when I lost my breath for a minute. The coffee shop was totally dark. None of the lights were on, not a single light, and it was dead quiet. The Christmas music had stopped, and so had the voices and laughter. All of the loud noise had disappeared. Every sound I had been listening to just seconds before had suddenly vanished. "I promise I'll be here on time tomorrow," my manager said as he fits his key into the lock. "I'll even be early. You'll be shocked." Little did he know that I could not possibly be more shocked to see him than I was at that very moment, as he opened the door to the silent, completely empty coffee house. Perhaps another individual with a deep love for creative writing.
What hobby is an immediate red flag? Those people who post prank videos on social media. I know someone who does this, and it's absolutely a red flag. Same goes for people who base their entire social media presence off getting views and likes. For some reason, I forgot these people exist in the wild. They shop, drive, and are just out and about. Scary stuff. I always assumed people who did this would be normal in real life, but the person who I know who does this type of thing does a lot of the obviously staged and gimmicky videos, which are super cringy. You might expect them to be attention-seeking, but it's actually worse. It's more so that everything is an opportunity for content, and it's like a switch they cannot turn off. There is zero living in the moment. Not to mention major social climbing and obsessing over how many people with blue check marks follow them. Absolute clout chaser. Every person they met, they immediately ask for their Instagram handle because every person they meet is an opportunity to gain a follower. This person is entitled and only sees people for what they can get out of them or use them for. They're very manipulative and obsessed with their image. This using people mentality carried over to personal relationships. In my case, the person I knew was having a full-blown affair with someone they knew that was married, and said that they simply didn't care if they were being a bad person. We're not friends anymore. My husband's best friend from college is a YouTuber who has 800,000 subscribers. Used to be a really cool guy, but if it doesn't create content for him, it's not a priority. He bailed on our wedding last minute. He was supposed to be a groomsman to go do some stupid video with another famous YouTuber. Definitely a red flag. The constant drive for likes and subscribers is toxic and gross. We all graduated to college over a decade ago, and the dude still acts like he's 19 years old. It's kinda sad. At first, we really respected him for blazing his own trail and doing his own thing, and getting out of our hometown, but he's just like every other douchebag influencer on Instagram now. Well, this kinda hits close to home as someone who is a YouTuber. I will say, over the years, I have caught myself getting swooped up in the content life and chasing the numbers. But I don't think I've ever done it at the expense of someone else. I absolutely hate prank YouTubers and met plenty of clout chasing creators as well. These posts were completely accurate about a decent number of creators in this space. Posting everything, and I mean every single thing, on social media. Knew this one dude from work that did this crap all the time. It was annoying as hell. Unfriended him when I was scrolling through and saw that he posted a selfie of himself on the toilet and used the caption to say, "Poopin'." Animal fighting, dog fighting, bird fighting, using dogs to kill cattle, wanting to see an animal kill another animal at your own amusement, non-documentary of course, seems like a big red flag to me. What about roaming the world unsupervised as a preteen, capturing wild animals in small enclosures, accosting passerbys, and demanding that they use their animals to fight your animals? Pikachu, I choose you! Wasting your time arguing with random people on the internet, especially if it's baiting. Well, I disagree. Stalking women and collecting their photos on a mural. That's oddly specific. Oh boy. This one guy, friend of a friend, wannabe photographer. Our friend in common approached me asking if I wanted to do a photo shoot with her. I agreed because I thought it would be fun, and I met him before in social settings. They weren't unclothed or anything. It was all very artsy and not sexy. One thing I found odd was that he asked to do a few headshots afterwards. They had nothing to do with the photos that we had been taking, but I didn't say anything. Fast forward a few months, and the guy and I got closer. Platonic, I was already dating my current partner. He invites me over to look at some footage that he recorded for a project I was doing. I got into his house, everything was normal for a bit. Well, we were talking about my project, and while doing so, he walked over to his kitchen, and I followed him absentmindedly while chatting. Then I stopped dead in my tracks. He had headshots of maybe 25 different girls taped to his fridge. Mine among them. Some had little marks made with markers. I recognized 2 of his exes and a girl I knew he had cheated on his last girlfriend with amongst one of the marks. He noticed I stopped and turned around. He didn't really say anything about it. I snatched my photo and my friend's off the fridge and left. Later, a guy that knew him confessed to me and my friend that the guy had essentially a hit list of girls he wanted to hook up with. He lived in a small town, so most of the girls he wanted got pictures taken by him. It's been a few years now, and from time to time I remember the dread I felt looking at those pictures, with him just standing a few feet away. I felt like I was in a horror movie. This sounds kind of like a setup for one of those stories where he ends up killing everyone that he hooked up with, and they end up finding that he has this box filled with little resealable bags where he puts locks of their hair, or like toenails or something. I don't have any friends that are creepy as that guy in this post, but this story did unlock a memory of mine from a time when a former friend of mine used my phone to search up a girl we met at our job. He ended up saving a bikini pic of this girl and sent it to himself. I would find this out later when my girlfriend at the time was using my phone, and while we were driving, she questioned why I had a bikini pic of a hot girl saved in my photos. As you might assume, this started a huge fight, and there was no way my girlfriend was going to believe my friend was the reason I had this photo. You still suck to this day, Dave. Saw this post yesterday about a guy that uses real mouse hearts and testicles to place them in clear resin cast of Lego men. I don't know what that is, but it's a red flag. Adopting too many kids or animals, especially when you can't afford them. One word, gambling. Casino dealer here, it's almost never a hobby. One of my peers who had a successful career in the medical industry started playing poker religiously a couple years ago, completely out of the blue. As soon as he wakes up, he starts gambling on multiple applications on his phone. He plays every evening, whether it's with friends or just random people. He started with no to low stakes and has worked his way up to higher and higher stake games. He used to be interested in live music, art, gaming, and he would hang out with friends when gambling wasn't involved. He had to move back in with his parents and stop buying herb, a 24/7 habit he had since he was 10 or 12. Not sure if that was related to his addiction of poker, but he won't say why he had to give up so much recently. But still, all he talks about now is when he's going to the casino next. From living in Vegas, I see a pattern of people having bad poker nights and then going to less skill-oriented games to make the money back. A $200 loss can become a $5,000 loss in a few minutes. I used to work at a slot machine casino. It's exactly how you said in that last sentence. Same guest would come every day and complain about the same damn thing. How much money they lost in the last couple of days. Granted, it is smaller amounts than $5,000, but the fact that they complained and still came back the next day was pretty alarming to me. Unfortunately, we weren't allowed to interfere or suggest a break from the casino, unless they came to us or that we saw a crazy change in their behavior. Even worse, we weren't allowed to even talk to them much because our boss said that we were interfering with their stay. It's sad that something that's literally made to be fun is sometimes someone's only income, or debt. You see people fade away spiritually and physically, and you can't do anything about it because the company wants money. Family vlogging. They completely violate children's privacy. Using kids to shore up your own online presence is not okay. There are parents that are pimping their kids on OnlyFans, Patreon, etc. I watched 2 videos the other day exposing people that can buy exclusive picture sets of several 8 to 14-year-old girls who are prominent on TikTok via parent-run accounts. They showed the metrics and their viewers and buyers were like 75% male, between the ages of 23 to 47. Freaking insane. The pictures were blurred in the expose, of course, but the pictures were said to be sexy bikini pics of little tween and teen girls. Disgusting crap. As a person with a kid who didn't even really want kids even, it absolutely blows my mind how easily some people exploit their own children. Like, that is your baby. How screwed in the head do you have to be to put money over their privacy, safety, and dignity of your child? I don't even post regularly innocent family photos of my kid on social media. Outside of like sending direct snaps to my dad or uncle, I'm far too paranoid about the kind of people that might see them. Even though I'd like to think I'm not friends with anyone that would look at my daughter in a predatory way. Damn, that just makes me so freaking angry. When you have a kid, your entire purpose for the remainder of your life is raising them to be the best version of themselves they can be, and protecting them from evils of the world best you can, not sacrificing them to those evils to make a quick buck. Holy crap. Much like prank YouTubers, I've never really been a fan of family vloggers. I've seen a couple, even met Shay Carl once at a convention and he made a video for my sister. Some can be nice people, but I can't ever shake the feeling that there are so many people that want to see other people's kids. Like, scripted television is one thing, but reality TV and online videos that involve kids' daily lives is just weird to me. Collecting blood slides. My friend had one next to his table next to his AC unit. When I asked him about it, he gave me this weird smile and claimed it was for work. I've never had beers with him since. Surprise, mother. If a person is preoccupied with their social media and they don't actually live and communicate in the moment, it's fine if you can communicate about it and make arrangements, but I'm not dating a person in a 3-way relationship with Mark Zuckerberg. I would totally be fine with a person that has a heavy social media presence for work, but I would want to be able to set boundaries that work for both of us on it. Yeah, my sister-in-law talks about influencers as if they're her friends IRL. I can't have a conversation without her taking her phone out and showing me someone she followed before they got famous. It's exhausting and honestly awful to talk with her. Her husband, my brother, has suggested she see a counselor about it and believes she genuinely thinks in her head that she knows these people. That, my friends, is what we call textbook parasocial relationships. On a date, casually thinking, well, I guess there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? 4. What? There's 4 ways to skin a cat. Influencing. Back in 1990, we had them. They were called commercials, then infomercials, then the crap became ridiculous. It's such a disturbing phenomena. Was in line at a touristy ice cream shop near me and the line was probably 20 people deep. 3 women approached the counter and asked for samples of various kinds. It was their turn in line, so fine. Next thing you know, one whips out her cell phone and starts making a live video on how they just discovered this place. They spent the next 2 minutes sucking their samples off mini spoons for their fans. People were still waiting in line and we were just like, get out of the way. They never actually ordered anything. For me, these women epitomize idiocy of influencing. They never actually discover anything, but pretend they're the first person to experience things. It's so fake. Yeah, I hate these types of influencers because 1, they do come off as fake, but most importantly, 2, they ruin a lot of awesome places. Like, I don't like the idea of gatekeeping, but sometimes we should gatekeep certain places. And I don't just mean chill, delicious food spots. TikTok and Instagram have definitely ruined a bunch of cool nature spots because this location is a great place for your next photo shoot. Ugh. Someone reading a ton of philosophy can easily be a very good sign, or a massive red flag depending on what specifically they're reading so much of. Shrines to people. When I first met my now late significant other, my son wanted to be sure he wasn't a killer and protect me. We were literally neighbors, so one day we walked to his house and my son said, "Let me see you don't have any pictures of my mom with X's on them." He thought my son meant pictures of his exes. Nope, my kid just wanted to be sure that there was no shrine of me somewhere with my face crossed out with Sharpie markers. Running an MLM or being an admin, aka dictator, of a local area Facebook group. Dude, I'm one of the mods for our local Facebook gardening group. So much drama in what I thought was a peaceful, calming hobby. Yeah, I see a lot of dictators in a few groups I've been in, but I feel like it's probably due to how crappy the members of the group are, most of the time, rather than them actually wanting to be jerks. I have dated 2 horse girls in my life, and they both ended up very similarly. Arguing with strangers on the internet. Not like usual discussions or anything, just taunting people because you're bored. My mother does this, goes on Facebook pages specifically geared towards things she dislikes, messages them big, long, nasty grams, then blocks them before they can fight back. And yes, my mother is freaking exhausting. This post is funny because I actually made it a goal this year to stop engaging with ridiculous people on the internet. I still have conversations with people, but the moment name calling or belittling begins to happen, I'm out. My mute and block buttons are also used now because I don't care if it's a sign that the other person won the argument if I use it. If you feel validation from winning an argument online, that says more about you than it does me. So I have no problem letting people think that. Kid beauty pageants. I dated a girl in LA who had taken part in beauty pageants going back to when she was a kid. She had a good amount of success with it, and she was most certainly a looker. But man, she was completely crippled with anxiety. Those pageants freaking mess girls up that start young. There's that famous gif of that girl giving a mischievous double chin smile. She ended herself at the age of 16 pretty recently. Those insane pageant moms are living vicariously through their daughters, the way belligerent sports dads live vicariously through their sons at baseball games. Not that it's an excuse for their behavior, but I think the pageant moms and sports dads have massive insecurities about living up to the conventional standards of femininity and masculinity, or are in denial about their own internal insecurities. So they become obsessed with forcing their kids to live up to an ideal they couldn't obtain themselves. And a lot of those kids also aren't going to be able to either, or even want to live up to these incredibly specific standards of masculinity and femininity. I'm pretty sure beauty pageants for little girls and teens just simply shouldn't be a thing. I remember reading an article about a girl that won a beauty pageant, and then it was revealed that she made a spicy video so she would be able to pay for the cost of that pageant. I think they stripped her of the title, and I don't know what happened to her after that. Watching gore or sending gore videos to their friends. I had a roommate like this. He started watching all kinds of gore and pain Olympic videos. It gave him some sort of superiority complex since he became desensitized to gore, and he would always try to get me to watch those videos with him. Likely so I would be grossed out and he wouldn't, as some sort of alpha move or something. Fast forward a month and I found our other roommate lying in a pool of blood on the bathroom floor, barely conscious. Where was our super alpha Chad roommate at the time? He ran out of the room and slept at the neighbors, leaving me to keep our roommate awake while the paramedics showed up and eventually mop up all the blood too. The one roommate lived, and the last I heard, he's doing well. The other guy, he can go screw himself. I'd make a bet that that guy was an average Joe Rogan listener. What about lewd anime figures? I get liking anime, but when your room is full of jailbait anime girls in bathing suits and lewd poses, there's something that's not so chill going on there. Shopping at conventions with the I have to be able to shamelessly walk into my parents' house with it, rule is surprisingly challenging. There's always so much fun when your previously G-rated, or so far PG-rated, fandom suddenly sprouts a niche offshoot which has a scantily clad anime girl as a central figure. Because you just know that if you ever mention the fandom to anyone ever again, they'll look it up and the first result will be one of those pictures. I used to live in Japan and we would semi-regularly end up at the mall for some food, break a bill, and get change. In Japan, the lowest paper note is about $10. So all the coins would go to ice cream, then with whatever I had left, I would take it to the arcade and try to win the lewdest, crudest anime waifu figure I could. One of my friends thought I actually wanted one and got me a Nami figure as a gift. I wasn't going to not display it, but it was hilarious to explain what the story was every time somebody new came to my house. I kind of want to give my 2 cents on this topic because there was a lot of people going back and forth in the comments on this one. For full transparency, I'm a weeb and I would totally buy one of those lewd figures because no joke, the quality and design of some of those things are insane. They just so happen to be lewd. But I do find it funny that people would consider it a red flag, but a house full of alcoholic paraphernalia, substance paraphernalia, or even weapons wouldn't get as questioned as much as lewd paraphernalia. But I will say, if like a majority of someone's collectibles are these figures and they're lolly based, then I'd say red flag. If their identity is surrounded by Disney, sorry, I said it. I had a cousin who engineered a massive split in the extended family by having her wedding at a Disney World in Florida. She expected everyone to fly there from around the country and stay at the resort itself. A bunch of the family members opted out entirely because of how expensive it was. She ended up feuding with even the family members that did show up but ended up staying at cheaper places in Orlando. I was fortunate enough to be too distant of a relative to even get an invite. I remember seeing an I Am the Jerk post where a bride and groom were both into Disney, so they convinced everyone to fly out to their wedding at Disney and then proceeded to not provide food or drinks for anyone. Instead, they paid like $3,000, it may have been more, I can't remember, to have a guy in a Mickey costume be at their wedding and force their guests to pay for the expensive food/drinks from nearby vendors out of pocket. They were rightly judged. I'd like to add that if a person's personality is centered around any one thing, it's a red flag. Gun bros, substance heads, car people, foodies. Basically, if all you can talk about is one subject and nothing else, that's totally a red flag. Crypto, NFTs, and listening to Andrew Tate. Adults who are really into experiencing child-oriented entertainment in public. The 40-something-year-old guy hanging around Chuck E. Cheese by himself. Not necessarily the odd bird who collects kids' toys, although that is a bit strange to me too. Okay, I'm feeling personally attacked from all the people coming after toys. First off, they're collectibles. But in all seriousness, I think people enjoy collecting things from their childhood or experiencing things from their childhood because it was a simpler time. Because let's be real, when you have to really look at the world and notice how everything is so messed up, it's nice to just go home to things that make you feel nice. Men of Reddit, what are some green flags on a first date? She listens sincerely and talks sincerely. When you find a common talking point and she genuinely adds to not only the conversation, but your view on said topic. Good conversation gets me going. My wife, who I've been with for 8 years, and I had an incredibly awkward first date for the first hour. There was physical attraction, but we were both awkward and shy. Conversation was so stale and forced that I texted a friend that it wasn't going well and I could meet in an hour. Until, for whatever reason, she asked me if I had a zombie apocalypse plan. And I did. So we nerded out together over that and other topics flowed in more naturally. We talked for 4 hours and walked from South Keys to Rideau Center in Ottawa, walking the entire 4 hours. One good shared topic can start something amazing. I have to 100% agree. A good conversation can make you a 10 in my book real quick. Looking back, the thing that should have been the biggest green flag about the woman I married was that she made just as much effort to see me as I did her. She texted me first, suggested hangout times, and came up with date ideas just as often as I did. I don't think I realized it back then, but I realize it now. When we were first dating, my wife was in law school and an hour-and-a-half drive from her house. One night a week, she would come to my house. She was temporarily living with her parents while she went to school as a single parent. We'd have a date night, she'd stay over, and she would get up at 4:30 a.m. and drive back. That was 10 years ago, and she still always makes me feel appreciated at that kind of level. I try to up my game and respond back at that same level, and I tell her that my goal in life is that she never realizes that I'm the one that got the better end of the deal when we got married. I love this, and I will say it is something that I definitely look out for when hanging out with people that I'm interested in. If I'm the one that's always making the plans or texting first, I will eventually become a ghost because I don't feel wanted. You don't realize that hours have passed while you're sitting and chatting. You sit in your car at the end of a night and talk for another hour, and realize even after one date you genuinely miss their company. Oh hell yes, this is one green flag. In fact, that's one of the things I love about my now wife. Every long drive, about 6 to 10 hours, we would have something to chat about, and as a result we would get so into our conversation that we missed our exits at least twice. At one point, we were heading to SoCal for a family event, and despite knowing the way by heart, we still managed to miss our junction exit because of our conversation. It was about K-pop and K-drama in case you were curious. Listening and reciprocating questions. I don't want to talk about myself the whole time. This isn't a job interview where I'm the employer. Ask questions about me too. Also, good manners go a long way. We accidentally showed up at the wrong restaurant. Well, I showed up at the north end of town and she showed up at the south end. She ended up coming to meet me halfway, and after dinner we talked at a park at a lake until 2 in the morning, and it felt like no time had passed. She wasn't on her phone at all. I told her that I don't kiss on the first date, just to make sure that it's not about a hookup. At the end of the night, as I was dropping her off at her car, she gave me a nervous smile and then kissed me. Then she gave me a hug and even texted me to see if I got home, as she ended up making it to her place before I got to mine. Anyways, we've been married 8 years now. I'm sorry, but I almost fell in love with your wife. That's so beautiful. Dude, girls making the first move is pretty hot, but the "did you get home safe?" that text is always wholesome. You feel comfortable talking. So simply put, yet often unattainable. She has a level of confidence, nothing crazy, but you can tell that she has an idea of what she wants. When she puts her phone away, hell of a green flag. After posting this, I saw a couple of comments come through about safety. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Do whatever you need to do to feel safe for sure. I could have been a bit clearer in the original comment and said phone is silent and she leaves it on the table, or something like that. I wanted to get across that I'd prefer her to talk with me and not people on her phone. Ain't that the truth? I understand checking messages, but when you're on it for more than 5 minutes or so, at least excuse yourself and make a phone call if it's an emergency, or if you're not enjoying the date, just say so. It's sad that being present on a date is a green flag. Yeah, it is pretty sad. I feel you always see those comments about men having such a low bar to make women happy, but people don't realize it's the same for men. We are simple creatures. When she brings the 1977 to 2011 flag of Libya to the first date, big green flag. My daughter went on a date with this guy she met on a dating app. We were worried sick, making sure she texted us her location every time she went somewhere else. She got very sick on the date and he took her to the ER, waiting for her for almost 6 hours. When she went back, he wasn't allowed to go with her. So instead, he went and got her Waffle House since she had missed dinner. She still wasn't out after 6 hours, so he sat in his car with the heat on during the Georgia summer so that her food would stay hot. When she finally got out, he drove her home with her food because he wanted to make sure that she got some rest since she was sick. They made plans to go on another date when she was feeling better. They got married 3 months ago. We love him and I officiated the ceremony. Damn, give that guy a medal for sitting in a car with his heater on during the summer. She compliments you on how you look. Such a simple thing, and it goes super far. Conversation flows easily and naturally. You're able to talk about big things like religion, politics, and children without feeling like it's a potential argument. You're both laughing and relaxed the entire time, and you leave the date itching for the next one. I'm with someone really special right now, and I'm such a quirky, eccentric person, and the fact that I can just be myself around her has me feeling like it's safe to fall in love. Pray for me, bros. This one is really special, and I've never felt like this before. I really hope I don't screw this up. She showed up. Dude, this is my biggest fear after a rough breakup. I finally dug myself out of a funk and matched with this girl who lived 4 hours away. This is why I believe in destiny, because my settings were not that far and neither were hers. We agreed to meet at a town 2 hours away from both of us. So I drove the 2 hours to meet her. I sat in that park for about 15 minutes absolutely terrified she wouldn't show up. Things went great. We dated for a couple of months until her psycho ex went bat crap crazy and lured her back in by what I think was poisoning his kids that she used to take care of, and when she showed up, he messed her up pretty bad until she took him back. Yeah, that took a turn, and I never heard from her after that when she went to meet him, and he started texting me from her phone. Do I know if it's all true? Not really. But no one would move to another state to be with someone just to turn around and move back 2 weeks later. In conclusion, people suck. That story took a turn that I wasn't expecting because, well, the guy mentioned destiny at the start, so I figured they were going to be living happily ever after. Guess not. If you pay for a meal or anything, and she says thank you and is genuinely appreciative, a shocking, and I mean shocking, amount of women won't even say thank you when you pay for stuff on a date. Bonus points if she offers to split the check, or I don't know, if you bought the movie tickets and she gets the popcorn. Example, my now wife offered to split the bill on our first date. I declined and paid. She thanked me, then when we got a drink at the bar after, she said, "Let me get this round." That's when I knew she was a keeper. I will say an odd green flag is when you offer to pay and she doesn't get mad. I once went out with a girl who legit got upset that I offered to pay because she was an independent woman and didn't need me. It was hella odd. Lots of laughter and smiles. You don't want the date to end. She asks you questions about your life instead of what you have and how much you earn, and she genuinely seems interested. She's honest even if it's to share the less desirable side of herself or nature. She asks questions about yourself. This is a big one. Worst thing in the world is to date a narcissist. I bought opera tickets once for me and a lady because we were both into that. It's very late when we were done, so I offer, and she accepts, a lunch date so we can talk about it. The date went fine, and then she paid for it. I was a bit surprised. I'm of the belief that unless arrangements are made beforehand, payment is done by those who offered the date. She said, "You paid for the opera tickets, and I had a great time then, and now I'm not about to get greedy." They listen and are actually interested in things you have to say. They talk too, obviously, and don't expect you to entertain them, but rather has a nice conversation back and forth. No obviously expectations on food, drinks, or pay for whatever you're doing. For me, it's a big green flag when you're adamant on separate checks for the first date, because it means that they are serious and not just out for a free meal, no matter how the date goes. Honesty about your intentions is also a really big green flag for me too. Knowing if someone is possibly in for something serious with you only, or dating around to find themselves. And potentially, eventually, a nice partner helps in setting expectations on both parts. And you might find yourself great friends instead, even if things don't click. For more quick green flags for what I find myself falling for in a date, like I did with my wife, I'd say instant attraction. It's important for both parts in an intimate relationship. Can't have a long-term romantic relationship without attraction, unless you're asexual, of course. Another is having fun together. My wife is also my best friend. I still love hanging out with her after 8 years together. Intellectually compatibility. Equally smart, or in our case, equally stupid. We understand each other well, both in language and references. We argue and discuss things from similar points of understanding even when we disagree. To us, it's a cornerstone of our relationship because even when we get into fights, we can take a step back and reason to the point of understanding. We might still not agree, but at least we understand why. Similar core beliefs. Things like religion, how we look at people, how we consider kids, war, death, religion, and the meaning of life, money, career, family, etc. The big questions that shape how we go through life. They kind of need to be aligned for a long and healthy relationship. And if you find out early that they don't, you can save yourself a lot of heartache. Many people might disagree on this one, but I believe if you want a lasting relationship without one or both of you constantly having to censor/alter their views to avoid arguing, you need to have a similar core to begin with. I was sick with something, a lot of pollen where I'm from. We'd barely been talking a week on a dating website and I had mentioned my sore throat and runny nose. She asked me for my address. Being a dude, I thought nothing of it and I figured it was for a date coming up. I didn't have a car, so I figured she was trying to figure out how to pick me up since she didn't have one either. 2 hours later, I get a knock on the front door. A bag of assorted cough drops, tissues, cough medicine, just everything you could think of. Hot chocolate included. We had our first date the next day and boy was I sappy. I had the opposite of this happen before. Had just started dating this girl and one day she randomly came to my house in the morning. Was let in by my grandmother and I was like, what the freak are you doing here? It was so random, and she definitely became a toxic ex. So maybe randomly showing up can be a red flag instead of a green one. If the person can win against me in Mario Kart. You see, girls always say they could beat me in Mario Kart as a flirt, but then they don't realize I'm deadly with the green shell and I will crush them. It can't be helped. My first date with the person I ended up marrying went like this. We met online, got to know each other a little, then agreed to meet after a while at a bar that they were familiar with. We sat, talked, had a few drinks, had some bar food, and got along like we knew each other for years. After the bar closed, we sat in their car. It was winter time. For another couple of hours and just BS'd with each other. I knew then I might have found someone special. My wife and I aren't drinkers. Our first date consisted of walking around a park for hours, talking easily about who we were. We left and I definitely wanted something romantic with her. She wanted to go for another hike with me. It took until the third date when she thought of me in the same romantic terms. The emphasis is conversation. Hookups at the very most can only take up about 30 minutes. Find someone you can talk to in life. It'll get better. My wife was 30 to 40 minutes late on our first date. It was the first time that we had ever met. She was very apologetic, and once she settled down from feeling bad about being late, she asked me questions no other gal ever had. Nothing crazy, but just questions genuinely interested in me. She has been the sweetest angel every day since too, and she also gave me 2 amazing daughters. Hard to explain, but her green flags were, and are, everywhere, aside from punctuality. Text me when you get home. Love that. If they're polite to customer service people, it's usually a good sign that they'll be nice to you. Looks like pictures, helps carry the conversation, actually shares information about yourself, don't stick with the generic answers for whatever reason, doesn't interact with their phone, although I get it if I just came back from the bathroom, and be on time. Not on their phone, not talking about X, seems engaged in the conversation. Well, I've been on quite a few first and second dates in the last 3 years. Some were a ton of fun. Some really sucked. The ones that ended up going anywhere had most of these in common. On time, conversation flows easily, she asks questions and contributes. If we're having fun, going on a second location is a good sign. At the end of the date, if she leans in for a kiss or even asks you back to her place. She's got to be polite to the staff, and if you pay for the date, being thanked is nice. Also being straightforward about her date goals from the start. If she genuinely cares about how you're doing in life, if she makes effort to understand you as a person, and if she chooses to split the bill at the end of the date. Being a girl going through these comments. Really? These just feel like common decency. Dating must suck for guys. Speaking as a guy, one positive is we do fear SA a lot less than women have to. But on the downside, we are socially expected to carry the conversation, pick up the check, bear the burden of making the first move, and take a backseat to whatever is on the girl's phone at any given second. I'm an old widower, but for me, green flags were open honesty, vaguely similar thoughts on politics and religion, absolutely no facade stuff, and taking turns asking questions about each other and paying attention to each other's answers. We talked for a while and really hit it off and eventually planned to meet up at her place to hook up. When I got there, we ended up sitting on her couch and just talked and talked and talked. This was our first time meeting in person, and our planned hookup had nearly turned into 4 hours of wonderful conversation. Been together 5 years, married her back in September. Easily the best non-hookup I've ever had. Met a woman for the first date at a local mom and pop restaurant serving Polish food. We both got the variety plate. I can't eat beef and she can't eat pork. We had discussed this before meeting, so I gave her my beef and she gave me her pork. Now that's already pretty freaking cute, right? At one point, we were both talking and laughing, and I started having an asthma attack. It takes me a minute to find my inhaler, take a puff, and I start to come back from it. And just as my breath is coming back to normal, she says, "So I took your breath away, huh?" I laughed so hard I needed to hit the inhaler again. Gotta love a person with a quick wit. Wasn't a first date, but a hookup at a party. I was chatting to her and her friends when she asked me if she could kiss me. It was so odd, but she did it in a super cute way. I agreed, but I told her that I think it should be in private. She asked me what room was mine, as the party was at a hotel at the time. We ran up and met in the room. When in the room, I started joking about how random this was, and my quirky personality kinda slipped out. She just mirrored my energy. Every quirk, joke, stupid slip-up, and action just worked with her. It was like we always knew each other. 9 p.m. quickly turned into 5 a.m. I knew this was something special, and I could tell she felt the same way. We moved in together within 3 months and have been side by side for the last 16 years. The green flags was it just worked. My girlfriend farted, no shame. Simply said excuse me and we both laughed. I swear we sounded like the damn horn section when we're together. She's the best. She was just really genuine and honest, and was just as nervous as I was when we met. She also had brought me a small gift that she knew I would love. She was honest about her intentions and expectations in dating. But what really topped it off was how quickly we were able to laugh and be silly together. An ultimate green flag is that the conversation just flows naturally on both sides. I remember the first date. Though we did not call it a date to avoid being labeled, it was rather a meetup with my significant other that I met on Tinder. We met up at a public coffee place, and the talk was just endless covering of a lot of topics. When we realized it was already getting dark, we still wanted to continue talking, and it was already a 3-hour conversation. By the time we both got back to our homes, it was 11 p.m., and I could not believe what had just happened. I'm horrible at reading people. Many years ago, I learned this little trick. You invite someone to do something in the future, but you leave out obvious details. If they ask you for those details, they're probably actually interested. Example, a group of us are going bowling next Thursday after work. Would you like to come? If she says yes, but doesn't ask what time exactly or which bowling alley, she isn't coming. I see what the poster is trying to imply here, but some people just expect you to let them know. Like me personally, if someone's like, yo, we're going bowling next Thursday, you wanna come? Then I would be like, cool, just let me know. Which means when you figure out the time and place, just let me know. Does your dog or cat like them? Animals see things we don't. I got the dog in the divorce. Years later, I went on a date with someone who ended up coming back to my place, and we stayed up talking until 3 or 4 a.m. I was sleeping in a hammock at the time and didn't own a bed, and also wasn't looking for a hookup, so my date slept on the couch. When I came out to the living room in the morning, my dog was sleeping on this guy's legs. Doggo had never come to bed, just stayed in the living room with my date. We celebrated 5 years this past January. We lost the dog a few years in, but my cat sleeps near my partner almost every single night. Open body language. This shows if they're actually interested in you and genuinely like you. If their body is pointing towards you and their arms aren't crossed, but also pointing in your direction, it shows that she's comfortable with being around you and probably likes you. If they cross their arms and their body isn't pointing towards you, or if you are sitting beside them on a bench and she puts her legs up on whatever side you are sitting on, this means she doesn't feel comfortable with you yet and probably doesn't like you. Talking about big things like politics, religion, kids, marriage. When I got out of my last relationship, I screened dates. I'm old enough to know what I want, and I wasn't going to waste my time dating someone who didn't match up. Also asking about STD testings. Shows me he is responsible and selective about who he sleeps with. I get one done every 6 months anyways, so I'm happy to compare results with him. We're married now, and our first anniversary is next week. To be honest, asking somebody about STD screenings I think is a positive green flag. I think if you're willing to do that for a possible relationship, I think it shows a lot about your character. What is the dumbest thing you got punished for in school? Flip the monitor screen upside down, Control plus Alt plus arrow key. Got banned from using any school computer for the rest of the year. I did this by mistake once, and I told my friend about it. After I left, he decided to flip the screen and leave it that way. I got in trouble for leaving the computer in an inoperable state. They had to re-image the whole thing. I feel like I did this once when I was younger and had a meltdown because I didn't know how to get it back. Technology is hard. 6th grade, a classmate got to school without her backpack and I was the only one to notice. School started and she was looking for her bag and I told her that I saw her arrive without it. After which she started yelling at me for no reason, telling everyone that I had hid her bag. I exploded with laughter because it was funny that she was blaming me. Teachers came and sent me to the principal's office. Nobody believed me and I guess giggling didn't help. I was in detention until this kid's mom called the school and let her stupid daughter know that she forgot her backpack at home. I'm 33 now, and not so long ago I saw this girl again. I went to say hello and to remind her of that day, which I still find funny. She didn't react at all to that. Yeah, you're still a jerk, Susan. Freaking Susan. In middle school, one of my friends brought Hello Kitty band-aids to school, and our entire friend group decided to wear them as accessories on our hands and arms because they were cute. Our English teacher wrote us up and demanded that we not wear bandages for the rest of the year because he saw them as gang symbols. A Hello Kitty Band-Aid gang. I still don't understand his thought process.
Sanrio gang rise up?
Holding my pencil the wrong way. Teachers hated it. They tried those little rubber things and nothing worked. I just liked my way. I have nice handwriting, by the way. Well, this really irked my 5th grade math teacher. So she started to dock 5 points on every test or quiz I held my pencil wrong. When my father asked what this was about, I told him and he laughed and said, "Keep going." Wait a minute, you had a 5th grade math teacher? You're telling me in the 5th grade you didn't have one teacher that taught you everything? My elementary teacher once freaked out because I was holding not 1, not 2, but 3 pencils at one time. Why the hell do they even care? 4th grade, this crazy girl who was always talking to herself told me about her elaborate plan to kill the teacher. I told the teacher and got in trouble for gossiping. This OP probably got put on the crazy girl's hit list after being a snitch. Talking during lunch. The policy was a silent lunch, also with silent classroom hours, meaning the children weren't allowed to talk, which essentially gave everyone half an hour of recess to get out all that built up energy. Understandably, my 5-year-old self was not down with that. We were in the process of being dismissed anyways. It technically counted as recess time. I have a somewhat common sounding name. However, I only ever really encountered 2 people with my name. One of them was in middle school. He was black. I'm white. One time I got called to the principal's office for something that had happened on the bus on the way to school. I wasn't a bus rider. All the other students involved were black. One look at me and the principal knew it wasn't me, so I was dismissed. The next year, I decided to cut class with a couple of friends. We just took off running across the field, which was behind the cafeteria at the end of lunch. As we ran, one of the administrators saw us, and another friend of ours was close by. Pretty sure he got grilled and ratted us out. My 2 other friends got suspended, but I never heard a peep. I suspect the opposite thing happened. The black kid with my name got called in, and they obviously knew he wasn't involved. Dude, this could be a sitcom. You guys could live together and get into wacky antics and social misunderstandings. Instead of Everybody Loves Raymond, we can call it Everybody Loves Racism. Being left-handed on the first day of 1st grade. The teacher took away my pencil and made me use my right hand. When my mother picked me up, I told her what happened. She talked to the principal, who apologized, and then called in the teacher to make her apologize. The rest of the school year was very tense. Another event that occurred to me. I got a day of internal suspension in high school for having an overdue library book. I had returned it on time, but the librarian put it on the wrong cart and it was shelved without being scanned back in. I know this because a few days after I returned the book, I saw it on the shelf. I still had to pay the overdue book fine. Dude, I wasn't permitted to graduate college until I returned or paid for a book I only had for 24 hours. Plus late fees because the library lost it. I very much feel your pain. Refusing to dance in kindergarten. We were doing some activity that involved dancing. I didn't want to, and I convinced a friend of mine to join me in protest. So they sent me to the principal's office and called my mom. Damn the man. Dude, this OP was trying to unionize in kinder. Hugging a friend of mine. School had a no PDA rule and they cracked down on it hard. I had just seen my friend for the first time after winter break. I gave her a hug for like a second. I was also female. Teacher saw it and threw a fit and I would end up talking to the principal. Good thing the principal was a smart lady. She let me and my friend off with a warning and I never hugged anyone in school ever again. Did this school happen to be in Florida? Because it gives off Florida vibes. Started a huge conga line my senior year. One morning, I went to my locker and was talking to my friends. We decided to start a conga line for some stupid reason. I was in the front, so I led us down the hallway. I started to point at people and told them to join the party. I told them to invite anybody that they knew. I led us through the cafeteria, through the gym, and when I decided to walk to the principal's office, a teacher stopped us and said that the conga line was a fire hazard since it had gotten so long. I told them that was dumb, and if there was a fire, we'd conga right out of the school. They gave me a good talking to for being a smart butt. Also, I was going to get paddled by the principal for fighting. He told me that he liked me, so he was only going to give me 1 paddling. I told him if he liked me, he should give me 2. I got suspended for that one. I would be shocked if this OP wasn't the class clown because these posts were hilarious. In 5th grade, we were starting an assignment. The TA was going around passing out papers we needed. I was going through my pencil case, kind of mumbling a supply checklist to myself. Pencil, sharpener, eraser. She handed me the sheet and I say, paper. She looks at me all weirdly and walks away. Don't know what that was about, but I just start working. About a minute later, the teacher walks up to me and says I have to stay for detention at recess. What? Reason being, the TA thought I said payback, apparently as in there will be payback for giving me this paper, I guess? It was completely stupid. I explained myself and they just weren't having it. We argued until lunch, and I was getting increasingly pissed off to the point where I was on the verge of tears. Eventually, everyone left, and the teacher said, "Okay, I believe you. I don't think that you'd be this upset if you weren't telling the truth. Just apologize and you can go out with the rest of the class." That pissed me off even more, and I asked what I was supposed to apologize for. Just say that you're sorry that we misunderstood you, then you can go play. I took the detention. Hell yeah, I love taking a stand. My elementary days are becoming a bit more foggy as I get older, but I definitely remember being a kid that talked back when a teacher didn't make sense. Definitely got sent to the principal a couple of times too. Cracking my back, the teacher wrote me up for doing gymnastics in class and sent me to the principal. He laughed and asked if I did a barrel roll. I had to have it signed by my parents as well, who also laughed. It was funny for everybody, but at the end of the day, I was still stuck on a Saturday morning doing stupid work. I'm still bitter about it. Reading during class. They were teaching us how to open a Word document. The detention was lunch detention. They assumed that me, a lonely little 6th grader, would be in agony by not eating in the lunchroom, but instead a quiet room. I just happily ate my lunch and read my book more. A woman yelled at me in college about sleeping in her class. I was in an intro to computer class. I had taken every computer class in high school, including Cisco networking and 4 years of Microsoft Office. I explained this and she was still upset that I had finished all of her work for her day in 10 minutes. It was making a super simple PowerPoint, and I decided to nap because the class was at 8 in the freaking morning. Man, must be nice to have computer classes for 4 years of high school. I think we had just one computer class for the 4 years, and just so happened to use computers in other random classes. My senior year of high school, power went out and neither my mom's nor my alarm went off. This was 30 years ago, no cell phone alarms. Neither one of us woke up in time to get me to school on time. She brought me in late with a note saying that it wasn't my fault that I was late. They gave me detention for an unexcused tardy. I go off that it wasn't unexcused, that I had a note that said I wasn't the cause for being late. The office person said that the note wasn't a valid excuse. I say something along the lines of, "So you're telling me that if I had lied and said that I had a doctor's appointment, I would be fine?" She says yes. I tell her that that's BS and all they're doing is telling people to lie instead of tell the truth. She says something along the lines of, "Someday I'll learn that telling the truth is its own reward and that lying has its own consequences." To which I said, "But those consequences aren't a detention." I was furious. I went to the phones at school, pay phones by the way, and called my mom at work. Told her the story, and an hour later I got called back to the office because apparently my mom had written the wrong thing on the note. I was at a doctor's appointment that morning, so I didn't have to serve a detention. In the 4th grade, I drew a picture of Link from Zelda and included a crappy portrayal of the Master Sword. Went to the principal's office and they called my parents. Sounds like you drew Link's other Master Sword. It must have been 1st or 2nd grade. I was sitting with the kid on the bus to school that I got along with. We weren't great friends, but we would talk on the way to school. I have no clue what started this convo, but he started asking me if I thought a grenade would blow up the bus. Well, I guess so. What about an RPG? I guess. A tank definitely could. That wasn't verbatim, but you get the gist. It was some kid just idly daydreaming probably about Call of Duty or something. I do remember that to this day I was reading when that convo started. I replied with nothing other than, "Yeah, that makes sense," or "I guess." We both were suspended from riding the bus for a week. Oh boy, here we go. I was playing Mario Kart DS with my friends on the bus in either 4th or 5th grade. Suddenly, like 4 bombs just fell on me at once. And I turned around and told my friend sitting in the back seat behind me what had happened after he asked what my exasperated "oh no" was for. I'm greeted at the school by a majority of the security guards and forcibly escorted to the principal's office for threatening to drop bombs on the school. I bet this kid hit the bus driver with the blue shell and this was his revenge. English class in the 10th grade. We had a test on a book that we were supposed to be reading. The entire test was short answer and I had literally not read a single word of this book, meaning it would be next to impossible for me to guess any of the correct answers. When the teacher was passing out the exams, I politely said to her, "I'm sorry, but I didn't read at all, so you just have to keep that paper." She told me that she was very disappointed and asked me at least to write my name on the test so that she knew that I was present that day. I wrote my name at the top in pen. According to the syllabus in that class, using the pen on any of the assignments results in -2 points on the grade. I received a -2 on that test. I would have performed better by staying home that day. Man, that teacher was petty. Got yelled at in the 6th grade. I was bused to a bad neighborhood by the guard watching us on the playground for being on the sidewalk, not the blacktop. I said, "Okay, sorry," and I did a little wave. She detained me and drilled me. "What gang sign did you just throw at me?" I was this little 10-year-old white Mormon girl and didn't even know what a gang sign was. My name is spelled with an AH in the middle, which is usually for said name to be spelled for female variant. In year 7, a teacher went off on me when I was writing on the front of a book saying that that wasn't my name and she spelled it wrong on purpose. Cue a very long argument I lost, which resulted in me having to write lines of the spelling without the H in my lunch break, while the teacher berated me for lying about something I wasn't actually lying about. This reminds me of a sub we had that wouldn't believe my classmate's name was Gideon. That's an older name, sure, but it's perfectly normal and biblical even. The sub flipped the freak out, thought everyone was messing with her that was his name, and he got sent down to the principal. There was this kid in my class with obvious behavioral problems, but the school didn't do jack crap to help him. One day at recess, some other kids were playing keep away with his hat. He has a total meltdown and just starts attacking one of the kids, throwing punches, kicking, screaming. Trying to defuse the situation, I walk up behind him and I get him in a bear hug so he stops punching this kid in the face and just keeps saying, "Calm down." At that moment, I hear a teacher screaming my name. I turn and see her watching from a window. A minute later, she comes running outside yelling at me and drags me to the principal's office. My parents are called and I have to have a conference with the teacher, principal, my mom, the other kid, and his parents. Nothing I say matters because the teacher saw me beating this kid up from the window. I ended up with detention, had to apologize to this kid and his parents, and was suspended from the basketball team. I was in the 4th grade. Prior to being dropped off at school by my dad, I had discovered an old school Lego spear. You know, the little brown ones? And a rubber band. I had likewise discovered if you stretched the rubber band around the length of the spear and then pulled slightly on it, you could make a square shape with the spear propping up 2 of the corners. This is amazing, I thought to myself. I conveniently forgot that if you pull the sides of the rubber band too much, then the spear goes flying. So I brought my new square maker toy to show all my friends, and they were about as impressed as you are all reading this. We're waiting in line to go to one of the classes, and I'm showing my friends, and lo and behold, the spear flies out of the rubber band and hits my teacher in the glasses. She just stares at me, I stare at her, and she says, "Go to the principal's office." I find out later that she claims that I attempted to kill her. The principal just laughed while all 3 of us were in the office, and she told me that she had to call my dad and he had to come in. The principal relayed the story, and now my dad's laughing too. I think that teacher was onto something. Kids can be stone cold killers. Yelling no loudly. I was in the 4th or 5th grade. The teacher asked if we wanted to play a game no one liked. Everyone was like, "No." And I guess I yelled. I didn't even realize I was louder than the other kids, and I was very confused when I got in trouble. I was sent to sit in a little cubicle near the classroom. The teacher forgot me and they all went to lunch and some other teacher found me there, crying alone in the dark. And then in high school, the teacher said no talking and the kid next to me asked me a question. And before I could even tell him to shut up, I got detention. He didn't though. I had to copy an essay about how I would bring my letter grade up by paying attention in class. I had straight A's. Another time, in maybe the 7th grade, my friend kept throwing my Hobbit book across the lunchroom, and when I went to go get it, she would bump me off the edge of the bench onto the floor when I tried to sit down. So she goes to throw it again and I grab her wrist to stop her and she starts crying and we both got detention, which I thought was really unfair considering she was bullying me and had literally knocked me to the ground. From my experience, bullies never got in trouble. I got yelled at for consulting an encyclopedia. No formal punishment, the teacher just knew she was wrong and I was about to look up the correct answer. I tell this story too damn much, but here I go. In the 4th grade, we were required to keep a journal. It was an English lesson thing. One time, I wrote about my passion at the time, which was insects, and about something that I had learned, which was insect camouflage. The teacher underlined every instance of camouflage and wrote that I spelled it incorrectly. She wrote it spelled CAMOFLAGUE. I was like, what the freak? No, it isn't. I knew this because I didn't know how to spell the damn word, and I had to use a dictionary. And when I looked it up, it was spelled the way I thought it was. I showed the teacher and she insisted the dictionary was wrong. So I got my friend's dictionary, and once again, it was spelled camouflage. CAMOUFLAGE. She insisted that his dictionary was also wrong and that she was correct. I was mad, so I brought a completely different, brand new freaking dictionary to school, where it was spelled the way I thought. She snapped and said if I didn't drop the issue, I would get detention. I dropped it, but I should have kept fighting for it. To her credit, I still remember how to correctly spell camouflage. Kissing my girlfriend. Someone in the house across the street saw, called the school, and I was suspended for a few days. This didn't happen at school, but I got caught by my neighbor feeling up my girlfriend when we were both in the 8th grade outside my house. I just heard this loud knocking from the neighbor's window and we both got super embarrassed. But hey, still touched some honkers. Some jerk of a kid thought it would be funny to attack me out of the blue. I ended up with a sprained wrist and some broken ribs and he was totally fine. I got a week of in-school suspension and he got away scot-free. It was in the 1960s. I was a straight A student. When asked my opinion about a book in class I was reading, I admitted that I thought it was boring. I got 10 lashes with a leather strap on each hand and a month of after-school detention. I had some kid prepared to hit me in the face with the football. I decided to grab his arm and take the football out of his hand. Another kid then took the ball and threw it at him. He went off and cried saying that I hit him and threw the football at him. Everyone in class took the stance of no snitching, and I got suspended because no one would verify my side of the story. So much for defending myself. This was the 6th grade. I got into an argument with the kid who bullied me a lot. So I told him, at least my parents like each other. His parents were divorced. Jerk move, I know. But this kid was also a huge jerk. Anyways, he gets pissed and leaves. I think, finally, he'll leave me alone. He returns with a big rock and bashes me in the head with it. I'm knocked out and have to get carried back to the nurse's office by another kid, leaving a trail of blood. It required a few stitches. So I get suspended for 3 days and 1 day of in-school suspension for bullying. The other kid went home for half the day. I have had a few situations in my public school life, but that made me lose complete faith in the administration. My buddy tackled me out of the blue and we both got in trouble for roughhousing. Understandable, but when we both told the powers that be that I had nothing to do with it and that he had tackled me out of nowhere for no reason, I remained in trouble because I hadn't dodged the attack. No joke. How did your crazy ex become your crazy ex? After I broke up with her, she used makeup to make fake bruising on her arms, neck, and face. She then proceeded to send pictures of all of this to our mutual friends as a warning about me. I suspected that she was crazy long before I knew her, but I realized that she was a freaking psychopath when she asked me to euthanize my dog because he was taking up too much of our time. Holy crap, that's a nightmare! Yeah, I had to pull to the side of the road to finish that conversation, because I started shaking uncontrollably after those words sank in. Dude, that is what we call a stage 5 clinger. Put an ad in the paper, became a lady of the night, brought clients to our family home, we had kids. If finding out your partner was cheating was an Olympic sport, this guy might be taking home the gold. I can't decide if this is hilarious or horrifying. Sims characters should never date their neighbors. Ever had a girlfriend threaten to harm herself because your Sims character is dating the computer-generated neighbor? I did. She woke me up because I had the night sweats and she was convinced I had AIDS. For some reason, I decided to appease her and I got a full STD screening test, including an expensive AIDS test. A few weeks later, I drove to her house and gave her my signed note, which I specifically had to request from my doctor stating my clean bill of health. She accused me of foraging the entire thing, and in the following argument pulled out her plates out of her cupboard and started frisbeeing them at me. I left immediately. About 6 months later, I had just started dating my now fiance. She contacted me to tell me that she believed me and wanted to know if she and her 2 dogs could move in with me. I never responded. Dude, just waking up and demanding you get an AIDS test should have been the "I'm getting the freak out of here" moment. I knew that, I know that. I was young and she seemed cool prior to that. She also got extremely religious during the course of all of that, and quit her well-paying job without notice. Honestly, I think her mental health was on a serious decline. I can speak as someone who has dated a fair share of toxic women. When you are dumb, young, and full of, well, you often don't think clearly and red flags turn gray. He painted my name all over his bedroom, bathroom, and lounge room. Proposed and then photoshopped us into wedding pictures, sent invites to all of his family, mine, and my friends, got an ultrasound photo online and tried to announce to Facebook that we were expecting a baby. Shaved our initials into his cat and left hundreds of love letters taped to my car. So that was crazy. We went on half a double date with friends. I was just being a good sport. Noped out when he proposed when the food came out. The rest came over the next week. To clarify, in case that was confusing, this was all after our one and only date. This wasn't a "we dated for months and then his crazy came out." This was "we met an hour ago, why are you proposing to me?" She tried to draw my blood out while I was sleeping to put it in a vial she wore around her neck. Dude, I heard about people that do this and I just have to ask why. Like, what is the purpose? Would start arguments out of thin air because I'm drama and this is who I am. Then one day I went drinking in her hometown. She ran into her ex and a day later she said sorry, but I'm going to start dating him again. 2 days after that, she was begging to get back together. Nope. Messaged me occasionally for a few years to go out for a drink, but eventually she stopped when she got knocked up. Good luck to the guy who knocked her up. In addition to being an absolute gem of a personality, she had awful genetics and family. Getting that quote at the start just made me think of Breaking Bad. I'm drama, and I'm the one who starts it. He tried to strangle me with an HDMI cord because I didn't straighten my hair that day. He had been crazy for a while, but this was the very moment when I realized it. He walked miles in the snow to get to my house, tapped on my bedroom window for an hour until I acknowledged him. I turned him away. In the morning, I heard him rustling in my closet upon waking up. The little freak snuck into my house somehow and was hiding in my closet. I threatened to call the cops, so he left. Weeks later, he emailed me pictures of me sleeping from that night. I still have nightmares about finding him in my closet. This is by far one of the worst stories I've ever read here. I truly hope you are okay and have some form of legal separation from this psycho. He called me endlessly for 2 years. He's disappeared now, but it took a while. Are we gonna question what she means by disappeared? Like, did he just go away or did she make him go away? Was supposed to be medicated and never told me. Didn't matter since she stopped taking her meds before we dated. She tried to make up for it by taking many different recreational substances that she failed to mention as well. Found her substance kit and I noped out. Her mother said, and I quote, "I'm surprised you made it as long as you did." I dated a girl that was bipolar and I can confirm that things can drastically change if they suddenly stop taking their meds. Killed the dog that my dead spouse gave me. What a jerk. Please tell me you went on an epic killing rampage like John Wick. My husband's ex, his girlfriend from high school, was crazy because she set up an appointment for a portrait session to have pictures done for our 3 children for her house. No, we didn't let that fruitcake take our children. They broke up their senior year of high school. And this was when we were in our 30s. We were shocked by the contact from her, never mind the appointment. We also found out she had her phone number listed, this was the time of phone books, as Mrs. Our surname this whole time, which was never her real name. She was stuck in her high school fantasy, which was frightening. This is the kind of story that has me Googling my ex's first names in combination with my last name, just in case. I could see one in particular pulling crap like this. This is definitely the start of a horror or suspense movie. Beat the crap out of me, then out of his next GF and their kids. He lied about his police record and previous conviction from beating me. He is charming and manipulative, so I get why she believed him. He got out of prison recently for what he did, and I'm just glad I'm across the country now. He started messaging all the new guys he thought I would maybe go out with, asking them not to invite me out because he felt like he still had a chance with me. This happened not once or twice. This happened with around 10 guys. He didn't even know them in person. I didn't even know them. I told her after 3 years of dating that I was actually a war refugee from Chechnya. She just knew that I was from Russia, nothing more. And that I had seen a lot of horrible things during my childhood. I saw people get executed, bombs exploding, people dying slowly of gangrene, dodging snipers, etc. Never really told anybody this in my life since I came to America. I told her because I was pretty sure I wanted to spend my future with her. I told her it was a massive deal that I told her this in the first place, because I've never told anybody. She left me right afterwards because she assumed I was crazy or mentally damaged from all the crap that I went through. She said that she didn't want to date some scary war refugee. The worst part was her parents, who I mostly communicated through because she refused to talk to me. They believed it too. They said horrible things about me, saying I was a criminal, a junkie, that I would end up beating her up, and that I'm just another street Arab. I am Azeri, not Arab. They basically put their foot down and said I could never date someone like their daughter. It was one of the worst weeks of my life. Really made me lose faith in long-term relationships. For all those curious, it wasn't an immediate thing. She always found me sketchy in a way because I was from the bad part of Brooklyn, and she knew I had a history with some hard substances in my teen years, even after coming to America. She was scared of all that stuff. She wouldn't go to certain bars or clubs that had a certain type of person. She preferred yuppie bars. She came from a white upper-class suburbs, so right there it was a major divide in how we grew up. Apparently that divide made her really uncomfortable. Like she couldn't relate to me, and finding out that I was a war refugee was the last straw for her. She tried to drown herself in a river in the middle of December because she thought I wanted to sleep with someone else. I had to wait out and get her. This was after she spiked my phone on the ground when I received a text message from a friend saying my then girlfriend had left her purse at the bar. On a separate occasion, she grabbed her car keys from me after getting wasted, and when I tried to stop her from driving, she almost ran me over. Yeah, she was nuts. Sounds like this girl I dated once when I was younger. Way before Uber and Lyft was a thing. She had been drinking and I told her that I would drive her home. She was extremely adamant that she would be fine to drive. Well, I told her that I was going to at least follow her home to make sure, and she just said fine. Well, the moment she got into her car, it became a Fast and the Furious movie. She was driving like she just robbed a bank and I was the cops. She tried to lose me on the highway and I ended up catching up to her at some gas station, and she freaked out and sped off again. I stopped following her after she called me and told me that if her dad finds out she's dating someone, he would send someone to kill me. I wasn't taking any chances, so I backed off. As you might assume, she turned out to be extremely toxic. Murdered my pet cat and left her corpse in my sock drawer. Was pregnant with another guy's baby. I found out when she lost it during a substance overdose. That was when I learned that she was pregnant and also did substances. Genetics. Both of her parents were bat crap crazy, so I shouldn't be surprised when she started stalking me after she cheated on me and I dumped her. She threatened a few of my, and by extension our, female friends with physical violence just for being around me, and tried to get me fired from my job. She called my manager and told him that I was on substances. Nothing further from the truth, and had two of her other friends come into my store and be extremely angry customers saying I felt them up or something. Fortunately, my boss knew about everything that was going on and didn't buy any of it. I noticed my undergarments were going missing. I mentioned it while doing the laundry. He accused me of cheating, saying that I left my things at some other dude's house, and that totally meant that I was cheating, and he began hurting me for the missing things. I was pregnant with his child at the time. I kicked him out. I was scared crapless on how I was going to support myself while I was about to give birth and miss 6 weeks of work. I began packing his things to keep my frightened mind busy. Found a big box hidden in the basement full of my undergarments, huge inflatable toys for where the sun don't shine, and trans adult content. My thigh highs were tied in knots with junk hair sticking out of them. I put in a video labeled with my name. It's him dressed in my clothes, doing stuff to himself while pretending to be me. Turns out he was a secret crossdresser with a violent history and multiple substance charges. Lied about everything, from his education to his orientation. I don't trust human beings anymore. Oh, I had one mega crazy ex. This girl was 5 kinds of freaked in the head and needed to be locked up. First, she had a kid. I didn't doubt that. I saw her stretch marks. Not a big deal. She claimed the kid had been kidnapped by a baby daddy and disappeared. Okay, strange things have happened. Things started not adding up soon. She was a pathological liar. Started with, I make $60 an hour in the military, which I knew was BS for her rank, since my mom was a higher rank than she was and made far less than that. She stole my car one night, and by the time the cops got there, she had already got back and claimed innocence, and the cops threatened to arrest me for making a false report. She then tried playing the ultimate psycho card. She said she got a call saying that the kid and her dad had been found in a wreck in Canada, and that the kid was dead. At first, I wasn't sure to call BS on that or not. 2 days later, she downed a bottle of sleeping pills with a full bottle of vodka. While she was in the hospital, I did some digging and found out that she and her husband got a divorce. He was awarded full custody due to her being a complete nutbag. I noped the freak out of there as fast as I could. Crazy story, but I do want to point out that you can 100% get stretch marks without having a kid. I'm a dude and I have some. Sometimes you just grow too fast for your body to keep up. When he got himself locked in 4-point restraints in the ER because he was convinced he had AIDS and started trying to infect the staff. Or when he proudly told me that he was the son of Jesus Christ. Or when he tried to kick in my door at 3 a.m. as a grand romantic gesture. Or also when he thought his bald spot would grow hair again if he was just a better person. That Jesus Christ comment reminds me of that kid on TikTok that believes he's the reincarnation of Hitler, because he has a birthmark where Hitler apparently got shot. Cat disappeared. Strange, was a friendly cat. Upstairs neighbor with big dogs came down screaming that my ex somehow convinced both dogs to jump out of the window to their deaths. She attacked me with scissors and a knife on different days. Serviced some guy in his car outside of our apartment. Finally, turned on her hairdryer and threw it into the shower with me. It takes a lot to piss me off apparently. Man, I wasn't expecting this post to get as much attention as it did, so let me elaborate a little bit. 2 disclaimers, I was young and stupid, and she was sexy as freak. This doesn't excuse my not bugging out much sooner, but it's just to give you some insight in my frame of mind. What I mentioned was pretty much in chronological order. Regarding the cat, not really that unusual. He was an indoor-outdoor cat, so any number of things could have happened to him. A neighbor may have thought that he was a stray and taken him in. He may have been hit by a car while he was out on a prowl. I have no idea. It's more of a, in retrospect, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that crazy bee killed him type of thing. The dogs, now that's much stranger. My ex hated those dogs. They were big and noisy, and ran around the upstairs apartment playing all day long. As such, she started a bit of a war with the upstairs neighbor, who was herself pretty nuts. I stayed the hell out of it. My ex had said several times that she was going to kill those freaking dogs, but I passed it off as just being annoyed with the constant noise. Hell, I didn't like it either. But otherwise, the apartment was great, so we weren't really too excited to find a new place. The incident, whatever it was, happened while I was at work. I came home to the crazy neighbor screaming at my ex about how my ex somehow coaxed her dogs into jumping from the window. Now my ex was pretty petite, and these were big dogs, so there was no way she could have broken into the neighbor's apartment and physically thrown these dogs out the window. I've owned a few dogs in my life, and no matter how stupid they are, they were never so dumb as to fling themselves out of a window. Now I had no idea what the hell actually happened, and to this day, all of this was probably 20 years ago, I still can't explain it at all. But at this point, I did start looking at my ex from the corner of my eye, just wondering. On to attacking me with scissors and later with a knife. Well, these incidents proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that she was dangerous, but both happened in the heat of a moment, during arguments. As I mentioned earlier, she was quite petite, and I was much faster than her, so I had little trouble disarming her without being really in harm's way. I mean, it wasn't like she was going to try and kill me in my sleep in cold blood, right? Yeah. I forgot to mention there was another attack. She tried to mace me in our apartment. Inside, with the windows closed. I just backed up and raised one eyebrow. Like, what the hell are you even doing? The mace just settled in a big cloud in the middle of the room, missing me entirely. This really made her mad, so she charged at me for another go with her mace can, straight into the cloud that she created. She dropped like a rock and I just rolled my eyes. Okay, come on, let's get you to the bathroom and wash this out. The makeup fun time after was great though. But at this point, the relationship was pretty much over. It was just a matter of actually, officially ending it, which neither of us really seemed to want to do. All of these things, of course, happened over a few years. And of course, in the times between these instances, it was actually all normal boyfriend-girlfriend type stuff. Shopping, vacations, laughter, dinners, and talking about the future. Of course, there was arguments and fights, some her fault, some mine, but most of the time we were both to blame. It wasn't like it was 2 or 3 years of nothing but crazy 100% of the time. Relationships aren't that simple. Anyways, near the end, we both had sort of stopped caring. That's when I caught her hooking up with some guy outside of our apartment. That was the, well, this is 100% done moment. It was failing before, but I had hopes that we could still work through it or something. Like I said, I was young and stupid, and she was hot. But nah, this was done. So I set my mind and attention to finding a new place. I didn't even want to bother fighting over the apartment. It wasn't that nice. I just wanted out. Oddly, we were getting along fine now. We both had accepted it, or so I thought. One day I come home before her and I hop in the shower. The past several days had actually been great. Laughs, hooking up, cooking, like a normal couple. She comes home while I'm still in the shower, walks into the bathroom, turns on her hairdryer, and without a word and without emotion, she just throws it into the shower with me and just dead-eye stared. I pulled a freaking Matrix slow motion action jump, arms out, water droplets slowly falling in some sort of hyper reality, as if, well, someone had just thrown a hairdryer in your shower. Probably yelled, "What the freak?" Then I got dressed and walked the hell out. Came to get my things later with an army of friends. This story was wild. Oh, and by the way, as a warning sign for all the men out there, if your girl ever tries to stab you, get the hell out. I had a friend that almost died when his girl stabbed him while he slept. No girl is hot enough to die for. He cheated and I was stupid and forgave him. 2 months later, I was served with an eviction notice because he lied to my face about having paid rent. I told him that I would give him a chance to work on himself, but I needed space and I would find somewhere apart from him 2 months later when the lease was up. He threatened to end himself 3 times, called me wasted multiple times, switched between "you're the best ever and I love you and I can't live without you" and "you're a lady of the night and you're the worst person ever, die alone." From voicemail to voicemail. By then, I had told him that we were definitely over, but the final nail in the coffin for him was when he drove to my new house wasted to call me names and tried to pull me out of my house. When I told him to leave or I was calling the police, and I just went into my house. He was psychotic and emotionally crazy, and will always be psychotic and emotionally crazy. The crazy bee literally made me choose between her and my mother and sister. She couldn't handle other women in my life. It went beyond not liking me being around them. She would go to crazy far lengths to get me away from any female in the vicinity. She never did that until a month or 2 before we broke up. Glad I did. He literally stopped talking to me after I told him I was SA'd. No breakup, just silence. He never spoke to me again. Art teachers of Reddit, what's the most disturbing artwork a student has ever submitted? My literary arts teacher told us a story about the only kid that's ever been kicked out of the program. He only wrote stories about women being killed and assaulted by snakes. No matter what the writing prompt was, he turned it into snake essay. He then read them out loud to class, proudly. He didn't last too long. Back in the 90s, I volunteered at an art studio that provided free classes for low-income inner-city at-risk youth. Wonderful nonprofit run by a couple of cool old hippie ladies who did an amazing job helping the kids feel free to express themselves artistically, no matter what they wanted to create. For example, one teenage smart butt made an elaborate paper mache of Bob Marley smoking a huge herb stick, and they hung it up proudly in a place of honor. No judgment or preachiness at this art class. So one year, they decided to have the younger kids do a Day of the Dead themed picture, with a short paragraph to commemorate a loved one. The teachers were expecting pictures of grandmas and maybe pets, and there were some of those. There were also several scenes of murder, including childishly drawn guns, knives, and oh, so much red, followed by short descriptions like, My brother was shot. He's dead now. It was loud and scary. I miss him. These were like 7 to 9-year-olds. Those pictures were displayed just as proudly as the grandma pictures. That sounds like a wonderful program. It really was. They did so much good. And now I'm going to get up on my soapbox about public funding for art for children. Kids growing up in bad situations need role models, job training, education. They also need, like food and oxygen, a place to express themselves, including the anger and pain that they carry that no one wants to listen to because it makes us all feel uncomfortable. In those art classes, I saw angry 9-year-olds who acted like antisocial, jaded 15-year-olds. They were actually relaxed for a change and enjoyed themselves creating something beautiful or ugly or weird, but something they had control over. The look of defiance, then gratitude when a kid would make a picture of a dinosaur stomping on a car wreck and the art teacher would say, "Wow, great use of color and detail," instead of more disapproval, was priceless. The heart and soul of our world is so much more than the bottom dollar line, y'all. I have to say, I absolutely love that these programs let the kids create whatever was on their mind. My earliest memory of writing was when I was in the 4th grade. My teacher had us do a group project where we had to make up a story involving everyone in the group. Well, one big thing that was happening around this time was the series Resident Evil was getting really popular. And I decided to write a story where we were all trapped in the zombie apocalypse like Resident Evil. This story literally had kids getting killed in it because, well, that's what happens in the game. I remember after presenting it to class, everyone wanted to be in the next story because they thought it was so cool. Looking back, I'm glad my art teacher didn't force me to write something different because it might have killed my spirit and robbed me of that moment of people praising my work. High school 1977. While everyone else is drawing Pink Floyd rainbows and peace signs all over everything, the biggest burnout in class makes this wide metal bracelet with intricate triangle designs cut out of it. He turns it in and gets a great grade for the first project he ever bothered finishing, and some well-deserved praise for his effort. Teacher hands the work back, and the first thing he does is grab a pair of pliers and bends all the triangles outward, making a thick metal spiked bracelet. I found that devilishly, disturbingly clever. Told the kids to draw something that would make them happy. One kid scribbled black all over the page and said nothing makes him happy. That student was referred to the school counselor. I was in primary school. The teacher told us to get out our jotters and come up with some ideas for a poem that focused on one particular emotion. I scribbled out and tore up 3 pages. It took hours for me to cheer up. However, there was a good side. There were a pair of jerks in my class who couldn't do anything to save their lives. They always came up to the teacher and asked for help with the age-old, "I can't do it." This time, my teacher pointed at me with my head buried in my arms on my desk and said, "That's what I can't do it looks like. Just because you're in tears doesn't mean you can't be smug." God damn, that art teacher kicked that kid while they were down? That's rough. When I was a camp counselor, I let one of my campers draw while he was waiting for his parents to pick him up. He left his drawing behind and my supervisor picked it up, went over to me and was like, "What the freak is this?" He drew a bunch of dead bodies at the bottom of a staircase, covered in blood, body parts left behind on the stairs, lots of red crayon was used. I didn't find out till later that one of his favorite things to do was play a computer game called Stairfall with his older brother. You know, the flash game where you throw stick figures down a set of stairs to see how badly they can get hurt. I never played that game, but I want to play it now. When I was in kinder, I drew a male ghost going to the bathroom. I had older brothers, so it was very detailed. And I even put a water line in the testes, because that's where I thought they stored the urine. The teachers and principal called in my parents for a serious conference, and asked my dad what he was going to do about the picture. After my dad finished laughing, he told them that he was going to make copies and send it to all of his friends and relatives for Halloween. And he did, and I still have a few extra copies. Oh, and I found out that the balls do not, in fact, store urine. Not me, but I played a huge part. Brother's art class in the 2nd grade was doing those full body tracings on big sheets of butcher paper. They were supposed to trace each other and then draw themselves. My brother evidently refused to draw a face for himself, would not budge on that. Drew everything else, but no face. Wouldn't say why, and because he was super shy and quiet, clammed up more when the teacher started grilling him about it. The art teacher calls the principal because this is concerning. Principal calls school counselor. Counselor meets with my brother, who still won't talk about why he won't draw his face, asking him questions like, "Do you not like yourself? Do you feel bad about yourself?" etc. At this point, he's really clammed up and is now refusing to talk because he's really shy to begin with, and all this questioning is happening. School calls my parents. They have a meeting about the fact that they think my brother is depressed or has some kind of mental issue. Parents freak out, of course, and my brother still won't talk. My parents and counselors start asking if he feels neglected or unloved or some crap. Mom's crying, dad is frustrated, and my brother thinks he's in trouble for something, and I guess in an effort to stop them all acting crazy, he says he doesn't draw his face because he hates someone in the family. Cue full family counseling for like a month. My mom is a wreck, thinks my brother feels like he's neglected, and doesn't love him, so she's constantly like, "You know I love you very much, right?" Counseling isn't going well because my brother is just quiet and confused. Me, 2 years older than him, is just mad that we always have to be at this office. Finally, during one session, my brother finally cracks. The doctor asks, "Who is the person in your family that you hate?" My brother says, Puss, our cat. She bites me." My dad and mom are stunned. The doctor is surprised, but pushes his advances now that my brother is finally talking. "Why didn't you want to draw your face? Do you feel bad about yourself?" My brother says, "I just wanted OP to do it. She's a better drawer than me." No psychosis, no early childhood trauma, no mental disorder, just an overly concerned art teacher and a little kid who thought it would be best if his older sister drew his face because she's a better drawer than me. It makes me really uncomfortable when teachers push children who are shy like that. I remember seeing stuff like that in art class where students didn't want to talk and teachers would just make huge deals about it, making the situation even worse for kids. There's a way to bring them out, but making a huge scene in front of the class is the worst thing you could do. Bro, all I have to say is after all of that drama, that is an instant chokeslam and powerbomb onto a mattress when we get home, followed by a Shawn Michaels elbow drop. Not a teacher, but in second grade I was infatuated with the battleship Bismarck. I also loved the flag on it, with the red background and white circle with that cool box thingy. We had to build a design to look like a quilt using construction paper. I did mine using the Nazi flag. It looked 100% like it. My teacher didn't say a word, but it was shown to my parents and they burned it. It took me 5 years until I figured out why they did that. Not an art teacher, but in my AP art class in 12th grade, a fellow student in class decided to make an art portfolio with the human fetus as its theme. One piece in particular was a hyper-realistic ink drawing of a tossed salad with little fetuses in lieu of shrimp. If my memory serves me right, they also did a piece that was a martini with the fetus in lieu of the olive on the toothpick. I had a second grader draw a picture of me and him together, and my hand was behind him. He wrote, "Coach Kubert likes to touch me." I don't believe I ever touched him, not really the type of person. However, it was pretty embarrassing. Not a teacher, but my daughter came home from kindergarten with this. When I asked what it was, she said, "Cookie Monster with his head blown up. And then he peed his pants because his head's blowing up." It's still hanging in her room because she's so proud of it. I didn't realize it at the time, but apparently we have a few copies of this theme. Either my kid is really a psycho, or she remembered that we thought the original was funny and did it again. Her early work was a little too abstract for my taste, but when Cookie Monster with his head blown up and then he peed his pants because his head was blowing up came out in '83, I think she really came into her own, commercially and artistically. The whole piece has a clear, crisp look, and a new sheen of consumer and professionalism that really gives the composition a big boost. She's been compared to early Basquiat, but I think the OP's daughter has a far more bitter, cynical sense of humor. You remember that Superbad movie scene with the beepies? My friend did that about 15 years before that movie came out, and someone turned it into the teacher. He got suspended for a few days, and his parents had to come in and review the notebook with the principal. I mean, it was filled front to back with peepees. I had this kid, I'll call him Joe. He had special needs and loved movies. He hated everyone but me. I was his first male teacher ever. He would often draw me pictures of Godzilla and King Kong. It was awesome. When he went to the next grade, he drew a picture of his new teacher being eaten by sharks. She freaked out, called a whole bunch of meetings, and went nuts. She was saying that she was scared that he wants her dead and she fears for her life. I was asked to have a talk with the kid. I asked him what the picture was, and he said that it was the lady from Jaws 4 being eaten by Jaws. We then proceeded to talk about how Jaws 1 and 2 are awesome. I will always sing the praises of a good teacher. My first and second grade teachers absolutely sucked. They were old ladies and they thought I was a troublemaker and often sent me to the office because I wasn't doing my work. It wasn't until the third grade and I had this amazing black teacher who noticed I was struggling and told my parents that I might have dyslexia. Sure enough, I did, and I started getting special help. Even though I hated it at the time, I really appreciate that my third grade teacher didn't just pass me off as the bad kid and really look deeper into what was wrong with me. A friend of mine had to have a meeting with his parents and teachers about his drawing in primary school. They were completely harmless drawings of zoos, houses, trees, etc. But when you viewed them upside down, they showed disturbing images. Obviously, he had no idea what they were going on about and said it wasn't intentional. He's now working in a good job and is completely normal. This kid drew a giant turd on the chalkboard. There was pieces of corn in it too. He said he didn't like Chipotle anymore. A yellow smiley with a sad mouth, with big black words written on it. I want to eat a lot of medicine to end myself. My parents hate me. This kid was 10 years old. Not an art teacher, but there was this kid in my art class who would always draw super dark things. Not so much scary, but more depressing. I figured he might have a crappy home life, and I noticed he didn't really have friends. So I thought I could talk to him and just be friendly. He seemed really nice, just a little weird. Flash forward about 3 months, and wow, I'm glad I was nice to that guy. He got called down to the principal's office during class, and no one knew why. We finally found out that he had written a hit list and had been suspended for a month. Seems a little lax, but whatever. He comes back to class and no one wants to go near him. At the end of class, however, he comes right up to me and says, "Don't worry, you weren't on the list." You had me convinced that you were talking about me right up until had written a hit list. I was the proud artist behind some strange works in community college. A girl in class thought I went through a rough breakup or something and just made nice small talk with me throughout the day. We talked a lot about the music we liked and local restaurants we recommended. I really enjoyed class because I got to spend time with her. It was nice. Well, someone else supposedly interpreted my art differently and told campus police that I was going to shoot up the college Columbine style. Got pulled from the class to talk to police and a social worker. It didn't go well because I got a year's probation for terroristic threats. I still went to class and all, but it was never the same. I always thought that that girl I talked to could have just been playing me. I find it crazy that people can just be punished from made up crap. Like, this isn't those people that cry about cancel culture ruining people's lives. This is legit someone made up something and it had an effect on another person's life. I truly think we need harsher punishments for people who make false claims. I had a male college drawing one student who liked to draw pictures of beautiful women screaming. I can see how this could easily be goth or trying too hard to be edgy. It wasn't any of those things. He just really liked pictures of women in distress and seemed obsessed by the idea of it. I jokingly told him to use his powers for good and not for evil, and that it's better to get your emotions out in drawing than in the real world. Not an art teacher, but I'm a volunteer at a center that does art therapy. One of the happiest little clients we ever had handed me a drawing of their deceased mother with their face twisted into a horrified scream. Eyes blackened and brown goop was pouring from the mouth and eyes. Sometimes I stay up at night thinking about it. Oh, and I thought I should verify something. This person's age was mid-20s to 30s. I volunteer at a center for adults with disabilities. I don't know the full details of this client other than they function at a lower mental capacity. My little brother got in trouble for drawing a picture of a polar bear eating a seal. Lots of red crayon was used. He was like 9. I didn't get why it was such a big deal. It's not like it doesn't happen. When I was a kid, I drew a dinosaur eating another one, with an open rib cage and everything. My teacher wanted to send me to a therapist. I just wanted to draw realistic looking scenes. I got in trouble with the teacher who couldn't stand me. We were using the computers and this age-old image just happened to be on some website I was on as an ad for something. One of those crappy ads that is on the side of the screen when you're scrolling down. She called a meeting with the principal and called my mom in. Thankfully, my mom called her out on her BS and pretty much told her to quit being a petty idiot and wasting everyone's time. I almost cried, I was so happy. When I was in high school, a really weird guy would ignore the instructions for any assignment and just draw pictures of people being murdered, cut up, buried alive, all kinds of crazy crap. The teachers never did anything. One day after school, he pulled a knife and stabbed my friend in the hand for being a Jew. Suspended for 2 weeks. He told someone that he was going to shoot up the school like Columbine. Luckily, the person he told went to the police. When they came to the kid's house, they found a rifle and a drawing of the school. He was planning on setting fire in the chemistry lab, and then when people came out of the other side of the building, he was going to start shooting from the bleachers in the football field with a rifle. I don't know what happened after he got arrested, but hopefully he's never freaking getting out of prison. That guy was seriously dangerous. Also, our teachers and school administration were clearly freaking brain dead. How did he not get thrown in jail or juvie for stabbing somebody? Plus, it was a hate crime. Most likely, the school didn't want police involved as it would look bad on them. And the parents pulled some strings not to get him expelled, so he was just suspended. It happens more than it should. I do want to add that this is a horrible and mostly illegal behavior from the school, and it definitely does not happen everywhere, and I want to believe that most schools are against any kind of behavior like that in their administration. But this happens in good schools, where the school's reputation, which helps them attract donors, is so important to them, that even the smallest violent case being reported makes the administration go all defense mode, and try to brush it under the rug in fear of any kind of violence being connected to their name. The fear of their job and money gets the better of them. Obligatory not the art teacher, but in high school we had a kid whose art portfolio was displayed at the school's art show. Numerous drawings, sketches, paintings, etc. of tadpoles. From a single one to dozens to hundreds. A full 2-year art class is dedicated to tadpoles. Until he informed everyone he was drawing sperm. Not the teacher, I was the kid. Little background, grew up in a small beach town and was somewhat known for my artwork and being pretty good artist for a little kid. In the 8th grade, we had to design a deck of playing cards. I was 13 and was going through a really hard time and made a series of super dark cards, like the Fallen King and the Dead Joker, Queen of Human Hearts, Hanged King, etc. I really enjoyed working on them and loved how they turned out. Very dark, but also colorful, like Dolly meets Tim Burton. Anyways, I went to a small private school and our cards were going to be displayed for the art show. Mine weren't allowed in the show and weren't allowed to be displayed for them being too dark, and my teacher said I needed therapy. Which, surprise, I was already in and was told to express my negative feelings through my art, which I did and then got in trouble for and denied a place in the art show. I still have my cards, I still think they are pretty dope. Still bitter about it not being in the art show though. I accidentally made a realistic hoo-ha in my pottery class. This happened to me during one of my ceramic classes in college. The professor was teaching us how to use pottery wheels to make bowls. If you can imagine the act of making a bowl out of clay, the clay is pulled up taller and wider as the pottery wheel spins. I'm doing my thing, making a real nice bowl. Then at a certain point, it all collapsed inwards from two opposite sides. The clay folded in on itself as it fell, and the weight caused the original bowl shape to elongate. I was left with what looked like a perfectly detailed clay hoo-ha. So naturally I left it as it was and fired it, and glazed it. Now years later I sneak it into friends' houses and put it on their bookshelves. When they find it, they shake their heads, laugh, and do the same thing to someone else in the friend cycle. I call it the brotherhood of the traveling hoo-ha. Men have read it who proposed and she said no. What happened afterwards with your life? My mother told my father no 3 times. On the 3rd time, he got wasted at the local bar and basically started pouring his heart out to anyone who would listen. Mind you, it's a very small village in the Italian Alps, and my father barely spoke Italian, and no one in the village spoke English, including my mother. Word got back to my mother about this sad American at the bar, so she went to find him and she told him that she'd marry him. My parents celebrated their 44th anniversary last month. Bro, it's women like this that give hope to the annoying, desperate male characters that want girlfriends in most anime. She was an art major and I had just joined the army. We had been lovers since high school. I asked and she said no. She wanted to get her master's. We were friends for a while, but we don't talk anymore. She works as a bartender now, I think. I ended up getting married to my best friend. We've been married for more than a decade and we have a 5-year-old son. Oh, I have a story about this. My friend had been with his girlfriend for years, so he decided he wanted to propose. What he didn't know is that she was also thinking about proposing to him. He proposed first and she freaked out because she had already set up her proposal and bought a ring, so she said no. Over the next week, she freaked out more and more and refused to answer his calls or messages. My friend then decided to use the money he had saved up to buy a plane ticket to Europe. What was supposed to be a 3-month trip through Western Europe turned out to be a year-long trip around the world. One day he says that he's coming back and she decides to go and wait for him at the airport and propose there. It turns out that while being in Peru, he met a girl and they fell in love almost immediately, and he got married in Peru. Cue 5 years later, he and his Peruvian wife are still very happily married and recently had a baby, while his ex still hasn't quite forgiven herself for ruining her relationship with him. At first, I thought this was going to be the typical one proposed and the other takes out their ring and makes it a double proposal, but this definitely had a turn that I wasn't expecting. I mean, how dumb can you be to let someone you wanted to marry leave the country for 3 months and let it turn into a year? Pretty idiotic if you ask me. My mom actually said no to my dad's proposal when they were younger, not because they weren't in love, but because she wasn't sure if it was something she actually wanted to do, rather than something that society expected of her or whatever. They still stayed together and had kids, hence why you're reading this now. And when my dad was terminally ill a few years ago, my mom plucked up the courage and asked him. Just to get back at her after all of those years, he said no, before taking up her offer a few days later. He died a happy man. For a bit more of context on this, it was actually 2 declined proposals, not just 1, both pre-children too, so let's say I'm lucky. Also, when they did get married, it wasn't purely an action for the estate or whatever, they already had their wills sorted out. It was just one of those last great days as a family type things. In fact, my sister and I were the only 2 present at the registry office. And when I say office, they literally squeezed us into one of the registry offices as there was a big waiting list for weddings, and we didn't know how long he had. He died 3 months later, so we were all hugely grateful for them helping us out with this. As a woman who got engaged and the proposal was later revoked, it still stings a little 11 years later. When you are so sure you're with the love of your life, losing them can really pop a hole into your life plans. We met in her home country of Germany while I was traveling. I knew I was in love. We dated long distance for a while. Me flying to Europe, her flying to the US. I suggested marriage so we could be together. She said no a few times. I didn't press, but I was patient and not being pushy. I knew she was worth the wait. Then it hit her that's how we could be together. If we got married, we could live in a country together. That was a difficulty of being born on different patches of dirt. A few years later, I'm still married to my best friend and living with her in Germany. Not all no's stay no. Life goes on. We lived together for another 6 years until she changed her mind and told me that I should ask again. We were engaged for over a year and got married in 1991. We are still married and have 3 children, and we are both still very much in love. I find it crazy that relationships still continue after a proposal rejection. Because on one hand, it feels like the rejection is saying, I don't want to spend the rest of my life with you. But I guess on the other hand, the person might just be against the idea of marriage. Which is fair, because you don't want to marry someone who is against the idea of marriage. I mean, look at Will Smith and his entanglement. My dad proposed to a woman who said no. My dad was a violent alcoholic and she said she couldn't be with him unless he got clean. Took him a little while, but he did just that. He wound up meeting my mom through a matchmaker and they've been married for 25 years. If that woman never said no to him, he would have never gotten clean. It was the lowest point in his life, but it all brought him to my mom, who makes him happier than ever. She had cancer. I said we should get married because I had full medical coverage from my work. She said no. And over time, we grew apart. I haven't talked to her in 15 years. I don't know if she died. I knew a couple who did just that. He proposed in order to give her citizenship and health insurance, so she could remain here and get cancer treatment she desperately needed. They stayed married for about 15 years and he even adopted her son, but they never lived together or were romantically involved. Years later, they divorced when he met the woman of his dreams and wanted to get married. They were all very close friends, with no drama. She lived and is a university professor now. He's in another state with the woman of his dreams. Phoebe Buffay, is that you? So this actor, Patrick Moot, proposed to his girlfriend at a basketball game and gets turned down while on a giant jumbotron. Clip goes viral on YouTube, Facebook, etc. She tells him later that she turned him down because she thinks his pee-pee is too small. So he travels around the world documenting what other cultures think about pee-pee size, pee-pee enlargement, and made a movie about it called Unhung Hero. I've never watched it, but the title alone makes me laugh. I've never heard of this film before, but I do agree. I think it's a great title, and I'm interested in watching it now. This is the story of my parents. My dad asked my mom to marry him several times. She said no several times. One day, my dad asked my mom to marry him yet again, and she said yes. He freaked out and left her apartment and dumped her. 3 weeks later, he hated his life without her and begged her to take him back and marry him. They were married 9 months later for 16 years until my mom passed from cancer. They loved each other so much and they had such a deep appreciation for each other. That was 25 years ago. My dad has not remarried. No one will ever come close to my mama. Dated a woman for over 2 years and popped the question. First time she said, I don't know. A couple of months later I asked again. She said, maybe. I was pretty bent out of shape. But then I found out that she was sleeping with several of my friends, so I dodged a bullet there, really. Damn, dude, I'm sorry about your friends, genuine crap bags of people, to knowingly sleep with your girl. I hope you find better friends. Dude, that would literally break me. Like, cheating is crappy if it's a coworker or someone you don't trust. It's 1,000 times better than going to vent to your friend about your girl cheating, and he's like, yeah, I'm the other guy. It happened to a friend of mine, and honestly, I think it did break him. His girlfriend slept with his oldest friend. This was a couple of years ago. I remained friends with the guy for a while afterwards, and his personality within the relationship just seemed to, for a lack of a better word, crumpled. She continued to sleep with other guys and manipulated him into blaming himself for the unfaithfulness. I think most people would agree that cheaters belong in the trash, set on fire, and then thrown off a cliff. FYI, that was just a figure of speech, don't take it literally. We received a letter from the immigration office saying that she was lacking some documents. At the moment, we were stressed, both of us with work and study, and none of us were sufficiently fluent enough in German to decipher this kind of language. We went to the university office for foreign students. The lady in charge translated the letter badly, telling us that even with presenting the documents, they would proceed with the deportation process. We panicked, looking for some more help. We ended up at City Hall. With the adrenaline rush, I proposed to her in quite a loud voice. If we got married, could we stop the deportation? Is what I said to the poor guy in the information office. I can't remember if he gave us an answer. I want to marry her. Will you marry me? She started laughing. I started laughing. The guy in the office gave us the telephone to the pertinent department and asked us to call. We went out of the city hall and we couldn't stop laughing. She said to me, well, thank you, but let's wait a bit. After the weekend, we went to the immigration office and the people there explained which documents were missing and how to get them. She wasn't denied the visa and we kept living in the same way as we planned. It was intense and, in retrospect, pretty funny. My mom and dad were not married but wanted a kid and had me. My dad, being a Catholic and Hispanic, decided he wanted to be married to my mom and proposed. She said no because she hadn't been divorced from her first husband for very long and now had 3 kids and preferred to stay unmarried. He threatened to leave her and got on his motorcycle and started to drive away until my mom chased him down and gave in, leading to what my parents call the voodoo wedding the same day. I'm gonna need more details about this voodoo wedding if you have them. From my understanding, the way it went down was they immediately flipped through a phone book looking for someone who could marry them for free the same day. They eventually came across a small mom and pop store / restaurant in a bad part of town called The Cut that agreed to do it in a back room using their waitstaff as the witnesses. It was a quick 5-minute ceremony that ended with the officiant making them eat a meal with them. To their dismay, they were charged for all of it and had to run home and break open the quarter jar. Okay, look. I get men can be very dramatic at times and act this way when getting rejected, but my guys, we really need to sit back and reevaluate how we handle rejection. Getting someone to marry you out of pure pity is not the strat. I was a young Marine and I was only home during the weekends. I was dating this girl for about a year from my hometown. When I asked, she said yes. Her dad, who was former Navy, kept saying that we should wait. We put it off for a bit longer. Fast forward another year, she dumped me. Father informs me that she had been sleeping with a lot of guys, like more than 50 over the last 2 years that we dated, and was very happy I didn't marry her, and he apologized for her bad behavior. She then totally ghosted everyone in her family for about 6 months. Find out she moved 7 hours away and was living under a house. And I don't mean in a basement. Literally under a house with a new BF. She calls her mom to come get her. The mother and father asked me if I could go get her and bring her home. Good times, good times. That would have been a big hell nah from me, my guys. I asked her right out of high school and she said she wasn't ready. We stayed together, went to college at the same school, spent the first year in separate dorms, then moved in together. Got married a few years later. Our 20th is coming up. In 2017, Google came up with this idea to allow you to make photo books out of your Google Photos account. My girlfriend and I had been dating for almost 2 years, and I knew that she was the one that I wanted to marry. So I created this wonderful photo book of all the selfies of us together, and ended it with a page made out of photos I generated that say, "Will you marry me?" I then proceeded to put all of these into an album and build the photo book. What didn't occur to me at the time was that the album I put these in was a shared album, and other people get notifications when you add new photos to it. And the other person that this album was shared with? My girlfriend. That evening, we had dinner and it all came out. She saw the photo and she wasn't ready. There were a few reasons why, and they were good reasons and smart reasons, mostly to do with timing, family, and finances. We weren't breaking up, we just weren't getting engaged at that time. A year later, we had successfully discussed the concept of getting married. We went ring shopping, she picked out her own ring, and by the time I actually did propose, we both knew what the answer would be. We celebrated our first wedding anniversary in April. It seems to have worked out so far, and the photo book is on my shelf to my left as we speak. I'm a firm believer that the only surprise in a proposal should be how you're proposing, not that you are. She or he should know that it's going to happen at some point, but not how. Marriage is a big deal and should be discussed extensively beforehand, as it is a huge legal agreement. I'm glad it ended up working out for you. The photo book idea was really sweet. My mom told my dad no when he proposed to her, even though they were already living together. She thought he was impotent, and it wasn't until she got pregnant that she said yes. In retrospect, I wish my parents would have decided earlier in their relationship that they could barely stand each other. That's a big oof for the OP, but money and kids have to be the two biggest reasons people don't get together, right? I spoke to her about it beforehand, and she seemed really keen on the idea, so I decided to propose about a week after in front of all of her friends. She was so shocked she picked me up off my knee and shooed me away. Most of her friends were confused because everyone knew what was going to happen, and she said that she was excited for it. I didn't know what to do. It was all really embarrassing, and later on she explained that she didn't mean no, she just didn't know what to say and was scared. She said yes after apologizing profusely, and just this year we celebrated our 9th anniversary. Not my story, but someone I'm friends with. They both had crappy homes and became a couple at 14. Somewhere around 20, he proposed to her. She said that she wasn't ready to commit yet. After that, he proposed every year, partially in hopes that she would be ready, but it was also kind of a ritual where he would just show her that he's still serious. She would say no every time. In their late 20s, he was done with his studies. She could see the finish line, so she told him that she's ready, meaning marriage and eventually children. That's when he got second thoughts about marrying the only woman he had ever had a relationship with, and he wasn't sure if he was making a mistake. They went on a break. She went to the US from Europe to do her PhD at MIT. They eventually drifted apart more. She moved on and found a new long-term relationship with a partner that's a lot better for her, while he quickly regretted ending the relationship and started hooking up with whoever he could find on Tinder without being able to form a meaningful relationship after. That's what a lot of people would call fumbling the bag. My mom rejected my dad the first 2 times. There was no real hard feelings between them. I guess my mother just wasn't ready for marriage yet. She ended up proposing to him. My grandmother and my mother sewed a suit for their dog to wear and attached a sign around his neck with a ring that read, "Will you marry me?" Then she sent the dog into the kitchen to beg for scraps while my father was preparing dinner. The next thing she heard was a very concerned voice shouting, "Honey, the dog is asking to marry me!" Cue absolute hysterics. My dad said yes to the proposal. My human dad and my human mom are still married 2 years later. We'd been dating for a year and a half, and I was due to move out on orders. Was in the army. She suggested we get married. I said, no way. I'm going off to school, army type, for 6 months and then a year on deployment to the Middle East. It just wouldn't work. She was calm and then said, "You think I'll be a burden to all of that, but I'll actually be a help." While just seconds earlier, all I could think of was what a pain in the butt it would be to get married and leave, and now, for whatever reason, it seemed perfectly reasonable that she was right. We got married a week later at the courthouse. I was 22. Last month, we had a really nice social distance dinner party for our 29th anniversary with our 2 amazing kids and a few friends. For non-military people listening to this, could you marry someone in the military? Personally, I don't think I could, but that's probably because I've come across too many people that have been in the military that are unfaithful. She said yes, as I had a special occasion planned, one of those observation wheels, and I proposed at the very top, and we were on our way to a family event, and I had the ring made and everything. Then a few days later, she said no. Everything fell apart. I was distraught. We continued dating for a while, but it was long distance, other side of the world. When I visited, it would be super awkward. Eventually, her dad kicked me out. I was flying standby and was stuck in an airport for 4 days. Took me years to recover. Now I am happily married and I'm glad it never worked out. I wasn't in a good place when I had met her and her family was super controlling. It would have never worked. The woman I married is super cool and is my best friend. Turned out better than I expected. We were dating for a little over a year, but I was so sure she was the one. I drove 2 hours to see her at college and went on a beautiful winter night walk and proposed. She looked me right in the eyes and said, "Oh, you thought this was serious? Well, I don't know how to say this other than that I've been seeing other people. Well, actually, I have been seeing other women." I was stunned. I got up, put the ring in my pocket, and walked to my car. Got in and drove away, never looking back and crying the whole time. Haven't seen or spoken with her in 7 years, even though she's tried countless times to reach out. Now it's a story I tell my friends who are nervous about asking their significant others to marry them, reminding them that even if they say no, it could be worse. Well, about 2 years later, I met my wife of 22 years. We are happily married. The one that said no got married for the first time last year and seems happy. My wife is way into me in ways that the former girlfriend was never, and I see that my life is far more happier with my wife than the one that said no. She's not a bad person. I was just young and in love with someone that wasn't in love with me. It worked out for the best. I'm glad she said no. Not sure if this counts, but I did propose. She said yes, but 1 month before the wedding, she took it back. This is what happened immediately with my life. I personally lost $3,000 worth of deposits. My parents and her parents lost about $4,000 each on deposits. Me and my parents are working class, so it took us years for us to financially recover from this. I spent about $2,200 on the ring I didn't want. That was my biggest regret, and I will say that to anyone who listens. The engagement ring chain I bought it from wouldn't take it back. I took it to pawn shops and they'd only offer a few hundred. This engagement ring store banked on customers who wanted the whole ring. Stone, band, setting. If you're going to buy a ring, just buy the stone. For the gold band setting, you can get that at a local jewelry store. Apparently my gem that I bought was crap. Most of the cost of the ring was BS. Most of my family was from out of state, and a lot of them were pissed because they had to cancel their flights. I had to go to the ER because I didn't leave my room. I couldn't take any calls because everyone was so pissed and I didn't want to hear it. I was depressed and just stayed in bed. One day, my roommates grabbed me and took me to the ER where the doctor treated me for severe dehydration and an infection. What happened when I got over it? I became stronger for it. I didn't propose to anyone until a decade later. Honestly, there wasn't anyone that I loved deeply enough to be committed in a relationship. But when I proposed, I was in my 30s. Our relationship was more mature than the first time I proposed. We've now been married for 13 years. She's my best friend. When I have good news, she's the first person I want to tell. And when I have bad news, she's the first person I want to tell. I also financially recovered as well. I learned my lesson about the engagement ring. Only paid $300 for it. She loved it and treasures it. After our 10-year milestone, we were doing so well, I took her to pick out a new wedding ring at any cost. She refused, and she still wears the cheap $300 ring and loves it. Redditors, what is your "did I freaking stutter" moment? Vehicle inspector here. Sir, your back taillight is broken. You need to get that fixed and come back. I'm friends with the owner here, and you're telling me that my car has problems? I already have, and if you aren't prepared in the future, don't waste my time. My friend has a shop and does vehicle inspections too. At least once a month he hears, "But some other shop gave me a sticker." And his response is always, "How nice for you. Take it to their shop then." When I finally kicked my ex out of my life, she tried to argue us back into being together. as I drove her to the airport, and even had the balls to critique my arguing techniques as inconducive to resolving a fight. I cut her off and said, "What part of this are you not getting? We're way past that. This is not a fight that I need to work through with you. I'm taking you to the airport and I never want to see or hear from you again." Dude, I feel your pain. Went through almost the exact same crap with my last ex. My ex openly admitted to getting me mad on purpose because she found enjoyment in it. Screw all crazy exes. Found out my supposed best friend, who I was letting live on my couch, was sleeping with my girlfriend who was also living with me. I work in IT, so I work crazy long hours, but we had a massive power outage one day and my boss said to go home for the day. So I left 5 hours early. Caught them both red-handed. Kicked them both out at once, which was ideal because I got 2 birds with 1 stone. They both apologized profusely and asked me, even though they made a mistake, why would I kick them out on the streets in an area where they can't afford to live? Silicon Valley. I laughed my butt off and said, "I guess that's something you two should have figured out during pillow talk, huh?" And I slammed the door as hard as I could right in their faces. Needless to say, it wrecked me for a while because I loved that girl. But looking back on it, I think it's the only moment in my life where I proudly have stood up for my morals and values and not taken any crap or continued letting people walk all over me. And that crap is priceless. God damn, dude. Props to you for being such a savage and an overall Chad. Hope everything worked out. My mom came to my new place, and out of reflex, she called me a lady of the night like she did when I was living with her as a teenager. I told her to get out. There was this amazing moment when she was completely disoriented by my reaction. It didn't compute, so I had to tell her again. "It's time for you to go, please leave." It was one of the most important moments in my life. I'm amazed you were nice enough to let her show up in the first place for treating you that badly. Good on you for immediately sending her out. Thanks, she was there because I want to stay on good terms with my dad. He is the reason I'm anywhere near her. Sending her out was very empowering and very sad. It was amazing to finally have the power to stand up to her, but really sad that this is what I have to put up with from my own mother. Ever since then, she has made an effort not to insult me in front of my face. So there's been some progress. Horrible situation. My mom was an alcoholic who was paying for all of her boyfriend's nursing home expenses and then paid all of his family's expenses like car payments, big purchases like appliances, or home remodel payments. My mom's addiction caused her health to plummet. She needs to be in nursing care. Her BF dies and his family never contacts her unless it's to complain about the money they need. I take over her finances and cut off all of those freaking sugar mama payments. If they had stayed in regular contact or regularly visited her, sure, I would have considered it. But no, they just wanted her to cover their payments. I cut off the entire family. My mother had a lot of money. One of the jerk's BF's sister calls to tell me that they're going to report me to Adult Protective Services. I say, go ahead. I have nothing to hide and you guys are the jerks. They were flabbergasted that I said, did I freaking stutter? They tried to report me, but all that happened was Adult Protective Services reached out to see if I needed any help transitioning my mom to the nursing care. They stopped talking to my mom after that. She died never hearing from them again. I was the one holding her hand during the last few days of her life. They didn't come to her funeral or to the memorial her students held for her after that. If I'm being honest, I think this OP was pretty soft on these people. Maybe this was their first time having to talk to horrible people, because I would have tombstoned these people to hell. When I quit my last job due to a promotion, I let my current boss know that I accepted the promotion and gave him 3 weeks notice, and that my last job was going to be March 31st. He proceeded to tell me that he would discuss a time when he would allow me to leave, and I wasn't allowed to leave until he said so. I very firmly repeated myself that March 31st would be my last day, and that was non-negotiable. He was the worst person I had ever worked with in my entire career. Slavery is illegal, yes? I called HR and they confirmed that he had no control to make me stay longer, and that I was free to move to my new position. On top of that, they said I was generous for giving 3 weeks notice instead of 2. They coached me on what I should do if the situation continued to persist, and offered backup to talk to him if it kept happening. He was talked to by HR. I was terrorized for the last 3 weeks I was there, as he tried to get me to quit so I couldn't move to that promotion. I contacted HR again, and chose not to hand over the 6+ months of records I wrote down of his inappropriate behavior at the time, because I was leaving that position and it could affect my new promotion. I chose to only submit my documentation to support the person after me if they also had trouble, to support firing him. I also had to go to the doctor due to the stress and anxiety levels. I was given prescription medication for migraines so I could make it through the last 3 weeks. I didn't have a single migraine after I left that job. No promotion would have kept me from burning down a terrible boss. Sometimes people just need to be knocked down a peg. Had a door-to-door salesman ring the doorbell. I was nice, opened the door, and stepped outside onto the step. Dogs were going bananas. I let him tell me everything he was selling and then politely told him that I wasn't interested. Went to open the screen door to go back in and he puts his arm out to stop it from opening. I have a resting jerk face normally, so I guess the look on my face was enough, but I was instantly livid with him. Had a dude try this while selling bullcrap books and reached out towards my kid, pointing, not grabbing, and says that I should be concerned for his education. This was after my 3rd refusal. It then turned into me saying, "Get off my freaking porch," and picking up a stick. I was enraged. Dude was trying to convince me that I really needed this overly expensive dictionary CD-ROM thingy. I told him, after much talk, that I literally don't, because I have a few paper dictionaries and internet access. He then screamed, "Well, it's not like you know what's best for you anyways." And he started trying to convince my mom. I took my mom's hand and left. I was 17 at the time. I worked in a gas station and 2 guys walked in and kept looking where all the workers were. I kept an eye on them because they looked shady. Then I see one of the guys put a pack of sausages in his pocket and then come over to the till to buy a Red Bull. I made my coworker, who was my sister, move so I could serve them. And then I scanned the Red Bull and said in the most casual way I could, with my heart nearly ripping out of my chest, I'm not a confrontational person, "Do you want to pay for the sausages you put in your pocket too?" And the look on this guy's face was priceless. I had to repeat myself and he just mumbles, "I'm sorry," and paid for the sausages. After they left, my coworker lost it, said how taken aback she was because she thought I was being rude to the customer before she realized what was happening. She ended up telling the manager about it, and I got a good old pat on the back and a sincere thanks. Doesn't sound like much, but it felt freaking awesome. Dude, I will say when you confront thieves and win, it does feel awesome. I stopped a group of TV thieves when I worked at a big warehouse store. I saw through all their little plans and set up my team to catch them before getting what they want. I'll have to tell that story in more detail when I do a video about stealing. My ex continued to text me like normal every day for 2 weeks after we broke up, something she initiated. Eventually, I ended up telling her, "Look, you don't want to date, you don't want to be friends, I'm not going to keep making small talk to make you feel better." A week later, she still texted me to wish me a happy birthday. The breakup, according to her, was because I couldn't read the room. This reminds me, my ex broke up with me because I spent Father's Day with my dad. Yes, really, she wanted to hang out at the beach and was mad that I spent the day with my old man. She then proceeded to have a new BF 4 days later, and always tried to rub it in my face whenever we were in the same room. I got sick of it and just stopped talking to her. Fast forward a few years, she finds out my sister took her own life. Well, said ex then proceeds to make my sister's situation about herself and use it to shoehorn her way back into my life. When I realized that, I just stopped talking to her again, and anytime she talked to me, I would just outwardly be cold. Checking into campus housing, when I gave them my last name, fairly uncommon, and the girl says, "Do you mean insert name that rhymes with mine?" It's like, what the freak, are you seriously suggesting I don't know my own name? This is always my experience. Person, misspells my name. Me, actually, it's spelled like this, spells name. Person, no, I'm pretty sure there was an R in it. Me, just with a blank stare. This is my biggest pet peeve. I have people in my firm look up my name to send me an email and misspell my first name in the opening. In turn, I respond by misspelling their first name and signing the email with my name, or I respond back with a shortened version of their name that I know they hate. It's Monday now, and it's happened 3 times today. These people have multiple degrees, but can't pay attention to the details like someone's name. Or, and I'm gonna say this slowly for those in the back, they could be doing it on purpose. Believe it or not, there are some jerks out there that will purposely misspell people's names because they don't like them or they don't feel like they need to learn a name for whatever reason. No thank you, I don't want to work Saturday. Are you doing anything Saturday? No, I just don't want to work Saturday. You contracted me to work weekdays. Anyways, that got me a complaint filed against me for not being a team player. It was my first job after leaving school, so I never really knew how to defend myself from and stand up to office malarkey. At the time, I did do a few Saturdays to appease them, but joined a sports team to give them a reason not to. I have since left for a better job. I worked at a college bookstore while in school and kept working after I graduated. Since I had no more classes, the manager gave me a ton of hours during rush week, which was fine by me, except for the fact that he scheduled me for 11 days in a row, including a Saturday that I told him that I couldn't work ahead of time because I had a prior engagement. When I told him that I wasn't working for 11 days straight with no days off and that I had plans on that Saturday, he asked me, "Do you really have plans, or are you just saying that so you don't have to work all those days straight?" Yes, I do have plans, and even if I didn't, I need some time off. I worked at a big retail place, big yellow tag, blue polo shirts, while at university. One summer, I came up a month early to get some work in. I was a part-timer, but they were short-staffed, so they gave me 40 hours every week. I had previously told them that once school starts, I need to cut down to around 10 hours and only weekends. My first week of school, they scheduled me for 40 hours. I reminded my boss that I couldn't do that, and he said he would fix the schedule on my next shift. My next shift, he gave me a schedule for 30 hours. So I gave him my badge and walked out without even finishing that shift. If they're not gonna respect my time, I'm not gonna respect theirs. Sometimes it's okay to burn a bridge. If you want to hear about how I burned the bridge at my last job, check out the "I Quit in a Blaze of Glory" video here on the Genius channel. After you finish this video, of course. When I was a teenager, I had a crappy part-time job doing telesales for a window company. The boss, Stuart, was an absolute jerk. He was always rude and unpleasant to anyone, and nothing was ever good enough for him. We were meant to work from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., but he would keep us up for another hour afterwards each night, with no overtime pay. One night I was babysitting after work, so I told him that I absolutely must leave on time. He said, "All right." Slightly before 8 p.m., a girl came for a job interview and they went into a private room. 8 p.m. came and went and Stuart did not come out. Eventually, around 8:30 p.m., I popped my head into the interview room door and said, "Stuart, you said I could leave at 8 p.m. It's now 8:30. I need to go." He said, "Fine, leave." The next day I went into work, Stuart immediately fired me for embarrassing him in front of a potential employee. A few days later, a friend, Mike, from the telesales place called me and said that Stuart had been fired. He, Mike, had been made boss, and that I could have my job back if I wanted it. I went back to work and there was Stuart, shamefacedly sitting with the other telesales operators. Apparently he had begged for and was given a job in telesales as an operator after being fired as the boss. He was so embarrassed that he couldn't meet our eyes. Needless to say, he remained friendless the entire time he worked there. Hell yeah, screw bosses like Stuart. I had an awesome female boss when I worked at a call center, but she quickly got a better job elsewhere and was replaced by what I assumed was a 40-year-old frat boy. Dude sucks so bad that I quit on him, and to this day it's the only place that I ever quit without putting in my 2 weeks. Also, icing on the cake, a few years later I saw him working at a warehouse store that I used to work at. Guess he wasn't good enough to be manager. I work at a job where I work a week on and a week off. After my week of work, I legit had wedding stuff to do, but we were in a tough spot last month, so I worked 3 extra days, just to help out. I told them after that I'm busy. Well, 2 days later, I get a call from my boss. "Boss, hey, I need you to work tonight, alright?" Me, "I can't, I'm busy the rest of the week." "Excuse me?" "I said I can't, I'm busy the rest of the week." "Busy with what, huh? Drinking and partying?" What? Who said anything about drinking and partying? My boss legit couldn't wrap his head around the fact that we have lives outside of this job. He legit threatened to not give me my time off that I requested over this. Basically called me a sack of crap for not pitching in. I just worked 3 days overtime, so 10 days in total. I called him out on literally everything he said and he backtracked on it and even apologized. Then says, "You realize I can write you up over this, right?" I said, "Write me up for what? Being busy on my week off? Yeah, that would be dumb." My boss, "Yeah, it would." Get out of here with that crap. What's funny is since that conversation, the word has gotten around about our conversation, and apparently he told everyone that he caught me in a big lie about being busy when I wasn't, and that he put me in my place and gave me a stern talking to because I disrespected him. He never caught me in any lie because there was no lie to tell. I also never disrespected him. I made it a point to stay calm as freak during that whole conversation, and to talk to him with respect. I feel like he just wanted to look like a macho boss, but he's going around making it look like he caught me in some big lie that isn't true. I mean, he even apologized. What's sad though is I told him that it sucks to put 5 years here and he basically told me I'm worthless just because I couldn't work one night. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what you're saying. Otherwise, you wouldn't be saying I'm sorry and how can I make it right? By treating me with some decency? How about that? It's crazy to me that it's hard for my boss to believe that after a week of work straight, we might have some crap going on in our own life. It's like in his head, everything is about this job. Sorry, man, but some people have lives outside of work too. We dropped our dog off at the groomer for her usual trim. When I returned 3 hours later, the receptionist returned with a dog that, while adorable, was definitely not our dog. Not the same breed or even the same size. I chuckled and said, "That's definitely not my dog." To which the receptionist thought the appropriate reply was, "Yes, that's Miley. That was her name, but not the same dog. I think I know what my own dog looks like, miss." Well, that's her. If you don't like the cut, you can discuss it with the groomer. That dismissive comment immediately made me lose my patience. Hey, get out from behind that desk and take this dog. We will go back there together and I will show you which dog is mine. I am not going to waste another breath arguing with you. Let's go. I found our Miley. It was the dog that was excited instead of confused when they saw me. I ended up getting that grooming for free. I was a CSR for a popular pizza chain and was handed a phone with an angry customer on the other line. They were complaining about having their pizza messed up, and I asked them what they ordered. Over the next few minutes, their story kept on changing. At first it was the sauce, and then it was the toppings, and then they were missing a side. I called them out on it, and I told him to go scam some other restaurant. Needless to say, he got only one F-bomb in before I hung up on him. My one rule of thumb is to never disrespect the people that handle your food, because you just might end up with some extra ingredients if you piss them off. When I found out about my ex-husband's last affair, he had several, I told him to open his iPad and start looking for a place to stay, as he sure as hell wasn't going to be staying in the house. He sat there and just looked at me like I was joking. I said, "Your fingers aren't broken, start typing away and find a place. I can either pack your bag for you and it will be done in 3 seconds, or you can pack it yourself." I said, "You have 3 choices, the car, the gutter, or find a friend." He then stood up and made his way to the bedroom to pack. Said he can stay at a friend's house. I said, "I don't care where you stay, it just won't be here." He moved in with the last affair that he had the following day. Yeah, that would be the day I quit my 16-year-old job, because they informed me that the money earmarked for my recovery from a work-related stress was for other people who might need it, and I would have to start paying out of pocket. After 10 minutes of chewing the HR rep out over the phone about how I was done and how horrible that place had become, and how I never wanted to see or hear from anyone there again, I got, "So what time will you be back in the office?" All I could do was hang up the phone, thank the therapist I could no longer afford, and go home. I never set foot in that office again. It was frankly one of the best days of my life, but a definite did I stutter moment. I was working at Wally World and a customer was on his phone from the start of the transaction. Do not do this. Placed a big package of toilet paper on the belt. I told him that it was $10 even. He was still on his phone and handed me a $10 bill. I gave him his receipt and he walked away. Right before he walked out, he noticed that I didn't give him any change and he tried to argue with me that I didn't tell him that it was $10 and he wanted a refund. I sent him to customer service because I couldn't give him a refund even if I wanted to, and he mumbled under his breath that I was a dumb bee. I replied, "It's not my fault that you were on your phone." He turned his head and said, "What did you say?" I slammed my hands down on the countertop and said loud and clear, "I said it's not my fault you were on your phone." He took a step back and left, and I went on my break. Worth it. Not me who said it, and it wasn't in a rude context, but I went on a date with the guy and tickets were cheap that night. As I was pulling out my wallet to pay for my ticket, he stopped me and says, "Nah, I got it." I asked him if he was sure and he says, "Did I stutter?" What makes that funny to this day is he did have a stutter, so when he said that, it was smooth as hell. That's it for this video. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Link at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. It's linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching and we'll see you guys next time.